So today we will be discussing about the recovery of loans in the banking sector. So here I will discuss some basic points that you all have to focus and the methods what we used for recovery and whether these methods are acceptable from a bank's perspective. Now, okay, now customer service is the number one. Alright, right now all of you all must understand it's yes. We have to focus on customer service. There's no argument on that, but you should not compromise the quality. Action should be in line with your bank size. Now, quality is very important, right? From a organization perspective, I'll have to ensure that you maintain the quality as well as action should be in line with your bank size. If you're a big bank, you should not try to do small things. Now, all the banks are not in the same size. All of us are competing each other. There are big banks, small banks, medium-sized bank, um, systemically important banks, state banks. So you might differentiate the way that you want, as well as the regulator also have differentiate the banks in a different way. But what you have to understand, depending on your size, you have to enter into a contract. Now, sometimes the even from the regulator's point of view, what they say is, if you are a big bank, you should not do these type of transactions because you are too big to fail, right? Same mistake, if it is done by a big bank, the charges will be very high. Sometimes they will not even charge a single cent for a small bank. Because what they say is small banks they can afford by their reputation point of damage is low. From a big bank perspective, damage is high, right? And therefore you're not supposed to do. So understand your size of your bank and based on the size of the bank, you enter into your contract. I don't want to explain that. You know where you stand, your organization, right? I'm not talking about number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you have a size that you have created for your organization. So maintain the size of that organization and don't try to do small businesses which are not relevant for your organization. Because if something goes wrong, the damage for your organization will be very high than a small bank. So very, very common argument is where sometimes the customers comes and they say, look here, your bank is asking, but the other banks are not asking. They sometimes quote X banks, Y bank as Z bank, right? So understand one important point. If the other banks are not asking, why are they coming behind you? කෙලාවට කියනවනේ අර කිසිම බැංකුවක් ගන්න නැහැ ටවුන් එකේ බසාර එකේ ඉන්න ඔයගොල්ලෝ විතරයි මේවා ඉල්ලන්නේ. මේවා අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. ඊළඟ එකගලොන්ගෙම ගන්න කියන්න. Why they are coming behind you? They know that they can control you because almost all other banks have rejected them. So please make sure it's important for you all to maintain the size. Enter into contract depending on your size. Need to follow the regulatory instructions, ethics, values, common sense. So all out of these four, what is more important is common sense aspect. Why these people are coming behind us, right? Why, if the other banks are not asking this information, why are they coming behind us? So let them go there and get the information. There's no requirement for them to come behind us. And there are regular requirements, there are ethics, there are values. So in line with those transactions, try to perform your day-to-day activities. That's very important. Any questions? Right. Can you see a picture? Can you see a picture? Can you see a picture?
Yes.
Now, what is the message that you get from this particular slide? Yes, can one of you all explain me what is there in that picture and are they in line with that particular picture, the statement? Yes. Can someone explain? So the pictures board says do not climb, play on and around the pipe. මොකද එතන වෙන්නේ? එකද වෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඊට වැඩි වෙනස් දෙයක්ද?
කරන්න එපා කියන දේ තමයි කරන්නේ.
Just like bankers, no?
Pretty much yes.
That is the problem. Now these are kids. These are kids, so we have to we as kids we can understand when you say something, don't do it, they do it, right? Whether you have the board or not, finally you there can be violations, there can be allegations, directives are there, regulatory authorities are, so many defense lines are there, audit is there, compliance is there, risk is there, external auditors are there, central bank audit is also there, but still you have a huge audit reports. So what are there in the audit reports? Yeah, what is there in the audit report? Your department or your branch audit report? Is it the things that you have done in line with the rules and regulations, or things that you have not done in line with the rules and regulations? Yes. Yes. Are the things that you
all the deviations that we have made.
Yes, right. So you can understand the situation, no? Now these are kids. We can expect, but as employees, as a financial institution, organizations, employees, if these things are happening, I know that there are certain things that you can't. I'm not asking you to be 100% compliant. There are certain decisions that you have to take based on the risk. But when you come to a audit aspect, you can't just justify, no, I took that particular risk and I did it. Because if the rule says it's not you're not in line with the rule, what you have done, there is an allegation against you. So that's how it goes. But try to minimize the non-compliances in your organization or in your department or your branch, because that will help you to create a sound environment within the organization. There can be certain things. I'm not going to say it's not an easy task, right? One can argue if you are going to do 100% compliance, we can't do business. Whether you want business or compliance, right? But still, we have to understand our confidence, our sector confidence depends on 100% on trust, right? So we are using public money, right? We are using public money. Last session I showed you how the public money and the depositors money, and unless we maintain 100% trust among you, the system, it's going to be a problem. So the customer confidence is the key to a sound banking system. Unfortunately, what I have seen, because of this competition among the bankers, sometimes there is a mistake of one bank, other banks are trying to get the advantage out of that. I think that is something unethical, right? All of us under one platform, we are bankers, we are in the financial sector. If something happens to X bank, I should not try to get the advantage, because if X bank is going to crash, I will also crash. So we have to create that thinking among us. Maybe that you are fighting for 25 cents or 50 cents or 1% or 0.25%. But as a sector, if something happens to a bank, right, we have to support them, we have to guide them, we have to coordinate them. Because finally, the existence of any bank will help the others as well. If a crash of one bank will affect the entire financial sector, crash. So keep that in mind very clearly. Time to time, things can happen in organizations, right? So at that time, don't try to canvas deposits from those banks. So if that bank, if depositors, all the depositors are going to withdraw that money from that particular bank, automatically that organization will crash. So then it will happen to you as well. It will happen to me. In certain instances, I'm just advising you all, it happened in previous occasions, few occasions, right? So don't try to get the advantage out of that. Explain the customers, no, it won't happen, right? If you're not, if you can't justify that situation, don't justify, but don't get their deposits into your account, because automatically that organization will crash overnight. for all the depositors start withdrawing. So understand that. So building the customer confidence is the biggest important requirement, right? Now, just can one of you all tell me whether you all can see the slides now? Can you all see the slides now? I will get once I come back to the screen, I can see the. I don't know whether you all can see the slides. I just want to clarify it. Shan, can you see the slides now?
No, sir.
No. No is your answer?
Yes, sir. I can't see.
Okay. Okay. Now 1 minute. Now can you see the slides?
Yes, now can.
Yeah. Now can you all see me?
Yes, sir. I can see the slide.
No. No. Can you see me?
No, no.
Okay. Right. Fine. Right. Okay. Now I understood the logic. Right. Okay. Now contractual relationship between a banker and customer. So when you're into lending, you have to understand there has to be a strong contractual relationship between the bank and the customer. So that is why the best relationship come through KYC, know your customer. I will explain today and next session why I say this KYC is important. Right? Simply, KYC. If you know the person, we don't have to heavily depend on the securities what they are going to offer, right? But as a requirement, you have to get the securities. There is no argument. So a strong contractual relationship is important. At the end of the day, your entire show runs depending on the contractual relationship. Now, when you come to lending and NPS, so you all know the lendings have gone down, NPS have increased. There are different reasons for that. Why this has happened? Now, one reason, market economic conditions. So you all know the market is almost crashed. Economic conditions are very poor. Uh, Sometimes people ask whether we have an economy, right? Even people have gone up to that extent when the government is against the lockdown. Government argument is that we have to protect the economy. So then some people say, okay, in order to protect the economy, you have to have the people, right? So what I say, both arguments are right. You have to have an economy at the same time. You people have to have also survive. So unfortunate factor is neither parties understand the gravity of this. So as individuals, we have to understand the gravity of this, right? You have to be careful. Now I know I don't know whether what your control. Now very recent past, I heard 3 4 deaths. Finally, they have not got out of home for so many months, but there were a lot of deliveries to their homes. So the point is, where what recently what I heard was even from this shopping bags you can get COVID. So are we taking appropriate controls for that? So as human beings, sometimes you see people they are not wearing the mask properly, right? Within the department, sometimes they um stay without the mask, thinking that your friend is not affected out of that. So from a people's point of view, the argument is right. You have to first live to have an economy. But are we contributing to that level is the question. Right? If we are maybe that you have taken all the precautionary actions, still sometimes you might get it. So what to do? But finally, you have taken the actions. No? At least you have to be happy with that. But then the damage will be very low. So as individuals, we have to understand the gravity of this as well, rather than blaming the government. At the same time, the government also should not blame the people. What can the people do, right? When you want to relax, you don't relax. When you have to put strength, you don't put the strength. At the same time, economic issue is a separate issue, what I see, right? So these are connected, but we should be able to have good relationship with the international world and should be able to bring money. So the point taken that you have to have in order to continue the economy, you can't lock down, right? So I'm looking from a balanced view. I'm not going to say neither party is wrong, but we have to collectively do it. That is the area that we are missing, right? So if you see market and economic conditions are badly affected for this reasons for this NPS and low growth of credit. Right. Now the responsibility, I think the responsibility earlier I used to take this responsibility only to the government, but today if I'm going to take this responsibility, it's government as well as the entire people, you and me as well. Inadequacy of regulatory support, right? So I will explain those points, each and every point I have taken. What type of inadequacy of regulatory support? Banks have failed in their responsibility. I think as bankers' point of view, we have to take the responsibility for the third point. Second one, it's beyond our control because we are not regulators, right? But I will highlight certain few points. But banks' duties, you and me responsible straight away. Incomplete secure documentation, bankers are responsible. Selecting wrong procedure by the bank for recovery. Once again, bankers are responsible. Practical issues in security, right? So it's common. It's neither party will have to take the responsibility for that. While knowing the practical difficulties, still we have to accept because we don't have better securities than that. Okay. Any questions on this? Yes. Any questions? Right. Now, when you come to market and economic conditions, so these are certain figures I got it from 2019 and 2020 annual report, central bank. So you can see in 2019, the NPL ratios were uh, increasing. And even 2020 report says the rates are increasing. I don't know how they have arrived at these figures, but simply what you have to understand is the rates are increasing. And the provisioning non-performing once again it's increasing comparing to 2016. It was 28 and now it has gone up to 42 in 2020. So these are indicators to see how the economy is performing. Economy is changing because of the economic change from our end. What are the actions that we have to take it? Sorry. Right. Right. Anything you all want to add for the first one? Economic and point of view? No. Right. Then inadequacy of regulatory support. I have highlighted certain few points on that. Non-availability of calibrated rating information for customers. Inactive from regulators are required. Sorry, initiative from regulators are required. So here what happens here? Um, now, if you take from bank to bank, for an example, I'm a customer of three of your banks. If I go to X bank, they will say, okay, I'm a high risk customer. Depending on the volume and the transactions I'm dealing with that X bank. If I go to Y bank will say I'm a low risk customer. If I go to Z bank, they will say I'm a medium risk customer. So my concern is where there is only one customer and where you have three risk ratings. So that's a problem, right? There is no uniqueness. So what I see is for each and every customer, there has to be a platform introduced by the regulator. It has to be the same risk. Whether I'm dealing with you or not, at the point when I'm entering into a contract with you, you know what is my risk, overall risk rating. So it has to be in a common platform that the regulators have to introduce that. You and me can't do, we will do based on our transactions, right? But there are certain categories of customers, they straight away say, okay, you're high risk, medium, or low, according to the money laundering requirements. But from a business perspective, we should be able to understand what is the money laundering risk as well as the overall other risk as well. And it has to be across the country, you have to have this rating. So then it will be easy for all of us, right, to enter into a contract with the customer. So that's a one important missing point. Non-availability about national databases and forecasts on macroeconomy. No common platforms, no nothing, right? No macroeconomic aspect information available for us to take decisions, right? We have to derive in certain instances, maybe the stockbrokers or the or the information given by the regulator, right? So independent bodies should be there to give this information. Digitalization of NIC. Now everyone was talking about digitalization of NIC, right? India has started this digitalization of NIC. That was in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, or 18, sorry, right? But here, what is our population? We have not started. As a result, today we see people with 2, 3 NICs. There was 2, 3 passports as well, right? You know, some politicians, they had 2 passports. No? So how can you have a common platform with one common platform? So even this digitalization, if the digitalization comes, will be helpful for us to have this, this new concept. I don't get that, but biometrics type of systems. Now, if you to go to Singapore and America, they have from your face, their machines identify you, and once you keep your NIC, the NIC they match you your actual figure and the NIC, then they will confirm that you are the same person. So our technology, we are talking about technology, right? For us to implement the so-called technology, we have to have the basic infrastructure. So having a digitalized NIC with the required features is a minimum that you can't and me can't do. That should be initiated from the regulator. If we can do those things, I think the banks are ready to bring a lot of IT innovations. Unfortunately, we can't introduce IT innovations because these basic concerns over these basic problems. Non-availability about financial statements which will not reflect the actual financial position of the customer. Most of the companies prepare financial statement to meet the tax authority requirements. So when you look at the financial statement, you don't know whether this is right or wrong, right? Uh, Sometimes they prepare listed entities can't do these type of things, right? But understand, even Lehman Brothers, they did off balance sheet transactions. WorldCom, they did. Their assets, their liabilities, they're capitalized. uh, Toshiba, they did overestimate their profits. So even for a listed entity, you can do it, but it's finally it's very difficult to understand. Now, reputed auditor will not do that, but unreputed who have just started the business sometimes do these kind of things. Finally, whatever the information you give it to the auditor, they will give you the opinion because they are not magicians, right? So these are some of the factors what I see as inadequate or regulatory support from the system regulators to improve this. Any questions? Are you all with me?
Sir, could you explain the items in off-balance sheet?
Yeah, off balance sheet. What happened now? If you take the Lehman Brothers, what happened there? they had certain liabilities, right? Instead of showing them as long-term liabilities, they hide those as sales, right, off balance sheet. So the point is where you don't reflect these in the balance sheet as liabilities. So now if you go through, if you want to really understand of a balance sheet of a company, you have to study the footnotes as well. Then only you will get an idea, clear idea what has really happened in this particular company. So the point is when you change the term, right, sometimes your total picture will get changed. Now, WorldCom, they are long-term distance expenses, flight expenses, fuel expenses. Rather than putting it as an expense, they capitalize it. So this is what happened. So finally, you will not get the correct picture when you are trying to hide your transactions in a different way, right? So you'll have to be very careful when you are reading customer accounts. You need to, especially if a new customer is coming at the inception, you have to go through their accounts, all footnotes, everything, and understand what has really happened in that particular company. Are they really worth to bring as a customer in your organization? Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir,
Okay,
yeah, as you said, the customer rating is actually it's a difficult function for the bankers, the rating. But recently, we had a session with Credit Information Bureau,
okay,
and we were told that they're supposed to rank the customers on behalf of the banks. And I think once they once they rank the customers, then it's beneficial for the bank.
definitely. So once again, it may be the situation where now all banks are registered there. If I'm going to do transaction with five banks, all my five transactions are with the grip. So out of that, they are going to rate. That may be the process, since they have the common platform with regard to my information. No, something to that effect. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's a good initiative. At least we have to start somewhere, and gradually we have to improve, right? So we can't be 100% perfect. Once you start something only, you will realize, okay, what are the practical difficulties. If you're not doing anything, there is no allegations or obligations for you. But when you start something only, maybe people will start complaining and doing so many things, but still it's worth. It's a national call, no? And it will
It's
be
a
easy
national
for,
platform. Yes.
yeah, it's a national platform, it's a national call, then we can depend on that. Now, otherwise, the customer will come for certain transactions with us, right? And to to be in our good books. And whereas he can do some other transaction, high risk transaction with someone else, which we don't know at all because of the banker secrecy. Now, when you come to banker secrecy, is very important. But when you have, even I think sometime back, the central bank wanted to have this KYC shared. They wanted to initiate it and they wanted to push it, but finally I don't know what happened. Sharing KYC, right? So even this section 77 secrecy, I think those has to be now changed up to a certain extent depending on this new developments as well. That doesn't mean that you can give information out, right? Either you have to we have to think the global aspect as well. Now global is very strong on that, and at the same time when you come to these common platforms, so there is nothing secret, no? If our bank customer exists with us, and if I'm sharing KYC with all of you all, that clearly shows there is nothing confidential in that aspect. So I think these are the important things that should come in order to protect the banks as well. So then none of us will take unnecessary risk. Here we 100% take the risk based on the relationship what you have. So unfortunately today bankers, they don't have much relationship with their customer because everything is online. You have not seen customers, majority of the customers for the last 1.5 years, right? So there are new things are coming into the market. Okay, now these are key areas to improve investor attractiveness. As a country, we thought, okay, the war is the biggest issue. Because of the war, investors are not coming. And once the war is over, we thought a lot of investors will come. Once again, we can go back to a country like Singapore. Now, what has happened today? Investors are still not coming. Even after 11 years past, still the investors are not coming. So these are the reasons, requirements to bring investor attractive. I took this from, once again, from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka annual report 2020, macroeconomic stability, government policy, tax structure. I'm not going to comment on any of these things. You independently use your common sense and ask questions under prevailing conditions in Sri Lanka on all these aspects. Will the investors come to Sri Lanka? Legal processes, labor market, trade openness, ICT adoption, infrastructure network, right? Do we have systems to attract investors in any of all these or any or all of these requirements? For me, it's a big question mark. So understand why the investors are not coming, because we have failed to meet these requirements. I don't think the investor will 100% expect us to maintain 100% in all of these things. But you should be able to convince the investor, don't worry, you come, you invest, we are not going to change the tax policy. Our law is not changing. We don't have labor issues. Trade openness is there. We have IT. Now, yesterday I heard that some of the data in the ICTA has got deleted with regard to this import of sugar or something. No, I, I missed that particular point. Some
Pharmaceutical items.
a pharmaceutical. Yes,
Yeah.
pharmaceutical. Now, just imagine ICTA is our main body. Now, if ICTA is going to say that they have deleted or some misinformation are missing, what will happen? Infrastructure, right? Government policies. Every 4 to 5 years, the policies change. Economic sustainability. So, tax laws are changing overnight, right? Sometimes you reduce the tax, following day you increase the tax. So you understand why why investors are not coming into Sri Lanka is because of these concerns. I took this slide from Central Bank of Sri Lanka side, so it gives a very clear picture why the investors are not coming. Okay, now this is little bit old record, but I thought of sharing. Ease of doing business 2017 report. Sri Lanka was reported 111 position in 2017, right? Time required to enforce contract 13,318 days, 3.6 years. Enforce a contract, even more than that in when you come to litigation. Proceeded to enforce a contract, Sri Lanka rated 40th position. I know that when you want to give a mortgage to a customer, sometimes the customer will have to go up and down for months and months. Cost of enforcement of contract as a percentage of the claims, 23%. So you have to spend a huge cost to form and enforce a contract. Right? So it's obvious that we are in 111th position. This is in 2011. I have not received the latest one. I will check, and if possible, I will let you know that as well. So these are the practical or the governmental issues what I see, inadequacy of regulatory support for us to expand, to grow our credit and reduce our NPL. When the growth is there, automatically when the volumes, credit volumes are there, automatically the NPL ratios will come down. To grow, you have to have opportunities. Investors should come. When the investors are investing, only the local market will grow. For the for you to lend, you have to local market should grow, right? So it's very simple, direct, common sense approach, but unfortunately, these things are not happening in the system. Now, when you come to banks have failed in their responsibility, any questions from the previous one? Maybe that you all have a lot of views and ideas, so it's little bit politics. I don't want to discuss on that, but understand uh, how things are happening. Why? What are the reasons why the investors are not coming? Out of those components, whether we can invite a person and can we give any guarantee to say no, don't worry, you come, all these are stable? No, none of us can do. Right. Banks have failed in their duties. It required for banks to study the behavioral patterns of its customers to take appropriate actions prior to moving bad. Now, you should be able to uh, understand your customer, his behavior or her behavior, right? Now, unfortunately, once the customer go bad, only you realize, okay, this customer is bad. You don't get any until such time you're clueless. So that is why the importance of KYC comes to maintain a very close relationship with the customer. Once you, if you know, then automatically, if he is in a bad condition, you know his changes. When one or two check get returns, you get an idea. Okay, this is the problem. We have to be put our brakes. Banks must have a robust internal credit rating model, a good system, which covers real-time customer information and macroeconomic conditions which affect the customers. This would help the bank to understand the customer's behaviors at an early stage and take appropriate corrective action. So your internal risk rating process should be very effective, right? So if you are getting this, if the CRIP is supporting us in that particular process, it's very good news. uh, Even what I heard was, along with that, even our electricity bills, they're going to include into the system, it seems, whether we are a frequently paid individual, even our electricity bill, water bills, all consumption bills. So that's a great information. But uh, I think more than those, what is more important is your debt part, right? If your debt part is payment are regular, then the bank should take it in very positive. Sometimes the banks might say, okay, you are not paying your water bill very frequently, monthly. As a result, we can't consider your facility. So we should not go up to that extent. So there are people who pay water bills 2-3 months ahead or after 2-3 months. So that's the pattern sequence. But if you see there is no damage for them, only thing they have paid late or sometimes they pay early. So that will not be a concern. I don't know whether they are going to they will include these factors into the final arriving at a risk approach. Hope that they will exclude these or they will have it separately. Watch listing process is not effective in banks. You have to have a watch listing, how things are, how people are progressing or going down or how they are changing. So these are effective measurements that you all have to have, performance based targets. And this is also another concern. When you bring these performance based targets, finally all you all are running behind numbers. So when the numbers are in front, we lose the quality of our uh, lending, and as a result, within a short period, uh, the customer goes bad. So you saw that is Wells. Did I show you the Wells Fargo video clip? Did I show you the Wells Fargo video clip?
No, sir.
No. Okay. I will next session. I will try to show that video clip. It's very interesting, right? So once you see that, it's very clear that there were performance-based targets. Even the Toshiba, it was the same. They wanted to get profits, and as a result, uh, they manipulated books. So so what I have seen now, high increase of NPL before this, especially NPL increase was started in 2019, then 20 because of pandemic, 21 with pandemic, right? So mainly the 2019 at the beginning and 20 are certain reasons with this performance-based targets. So when you start rewarding individuals, they will run behind the numbers for their individual goal, not the organization goal. So that's a concern, right? Types of customer business entities and liability for borrowings. uh, I will show you one particular table, then you will understand why we have to be very careful on lending and what controls that we have. Now, individuals are there, joint account holders, sole proprietors, partnerships, companies are there. Now, when you come to lending liability, I have highlighted three companies, three businesses: sole proprietorship, partnerships, and companies. Out of these three, uh, uh, I have taken three scenarios each. We'll assume that these three businesses are going to close down their business, right? So there is a point that they decided to close down their business. Now I'm expecting you to give an answer, right? Please let me know your answer. Now, in case of a sole proprietorship, at the time of closing down the business, its assets and liabilities 10 million each. Okay, so the net impact is zero. Easily, they can sell the proprietorship assets and settle the liabilities. No problem at all. The second scenario, assets 10 million, liabilities 5 million. Uh, Now, who can enjoy this excess money, 5 million?
The proprietor.
Yeah, the proprietor can enjoy. The reason is that the proprietor is the owner of that particular business. So then there is no issue. He gets the balance. A third scenario, assets 5 million, 10 million liabilities. Who will have to pay that 5 million?
Proprietor again.
Yeah, because proprietor, we say he is personally liable for the debts of the business. So that is why that's one of the disadvantage of uh, sole proprietorship. So in case if the business assets are not adequate, sole proprietor will have to pay from his pocket. Okay, that's done. Then the partnerships, 10 and 10, no problem. 10 and 5, who will have to, who can enjoy that excess money? 10 and 5,
The partners.
partners. They're the owners of the firm. They can enjoy the excess money. Third scenario, 5 and 10, who will have to bear the loss? Yes?
Partners.
Yeah, partners are the owners of the partnership. They are joint and severally liable. They are the agents of the firm. So, as a banker, you can claim from the partners, no problem. Fine. Third scenario is on companies. 10-10, no problem. 10 and 5, who can share the excess money of the company? Who can share the excess money? Who can share the excess money of the company at the point of liquidation? Yes?
Shareholders.
Yeah, shareholders as the owners, they can share the excess funds. Okay. 5 and 10, who will have to bear the loss?
The bank.
Any different views? Any different answers? So one answer is there to say bank. Are there any different answers? No? Why you say the bank?
Probably an lending institution would have funded that liability. That's why I just assumed.
Why not the shareholders? Why not the directors?
Because the entity and the individual are two different these things, right?
Okay. Right. Your answer is right. Right. So understand now, if you are dealing with a company and if there is no adequate assets, directors are not liable, shareholders are not liable. Shareholders' liability is to the maximum amount that they had invested in the company. Directors, they don't have any personal liability unless they have given a personal guarantee. Right? So such an instance, what you have to understand is, as a lender or the creditors will have to lose the will lose the money. You are a creditor. So if you have given a facility without adequate assets, what will happen to your money? You will lose your money. So finally the hit will come to your books. Now similarly, though we say in case of a partnership and sole proprietorships, sole proprietor is the person who will have to pay, or the partners are the people who will have to pay. If they say that we are bankrupt, we don't have money, what happened then? Who will have to bear the loss? Yes? Who will have to bear the loss? Yes? In case of a sole proprietorship, even a partnership, the sole proprietor or the partner says we don't have money. Yes? Who will have to bear the loss?
Still the bank, the lending institution.
Once again, it's a bank. So finally, if you don't maintain a good relationship, KYC with any of the customers, it will come to you. Right? We are taking public money and we are lending, and we don't know the parties we have lent. And if something goes wrong, you will have to bear the loss. It will affect your balance sheet, it will affect your liabilities, and finally, you will not be able to pay your depositors. So that is why, comparing with sole proprietorship and partnership, the risk of companies are very high. Right? Risk of companies are very high. Right? So therefore, you have to be very careful in that aspect. Any questions on that? Any questions on that?
Is it prudent to obtain a personal grant from directors for each facility we are giving? So we can personally liable directors for the facility we are giving. Is it prudent?
For each and every facility to get a director's personal guarantee. Yeah. Why you are not taking any other securities?
Uh, Securities and as an additional security?
Yeah, the point is where when you want to realize it, you can't. If you have the personal guarantee and if you have a stock mortgage and if you have a property mortgage, you have to select one. You can't mix mobiles and immobiles. Now these are mobiles, immovers, and personal, right? So if you want to put some kind of additional burden to them, personally make them liable, yes. Mentally make them to say that you are responsible for this, it's fine. Okay, that's fine, then there is no issue, you can take it. But the question is whether the customer will agree for that. Now if the customer, for an example, if I'm the customer, if I form a company and if I'm going to give you a property of my company, and if you're going to ask me to give a personal guarantee, I will say no, no way. Why should I give my personal guarantee? Already my property is there. So can you demand up to that level, especially in this kind of a situation? Except you can take any amount of securities. There is no restriction from the law But at the point of litigation, you have to select one security and proceed. You can't exercise on all. You can't go for parate and you can't go for personal action against the personal guarantee. So at that time, which is more stronger, you have to use it. Obtaining any number of securities, individual facility level is acceptable. You can do it. But understand whether the customer is willing to do that, whether he will agree for that. If he is agreeing, no issue. You can do it. There's no restriction for that actually. Right. Any questions?
Sir, if one security is not enough to cover up our losses, can't we go for the other one? No.
It depends. Now, initially, when you are taking a giving a facility, you have to ensure that your security should cover your facilities. Now, gradually, when the loan is paid, the liability will get reduced, and we'll assume that the asset is not security value is not going to go down. So then, theoretically or in a common sense aspect, it can't happen. Then what happens? What I say is either your security, if the loan is going down, at the same rate, the security value is also going down. In such an instance, you will have a leeway where you have to use the personal guarantee. So what you can do is, as a collateral, you can get the director's joint and several guarantee. In case if the security is not adequate, you can claim from the joint and several guarantee. So logically, it can't happen, right? When the repayment comes, the liability of the loan will come down as well, and we expect the security value to go up. But for some reason, if the security value is coming down, and if there's a leeway between this gap, yes, if you have a collateral security, joint and several guarantees of the directors, you can claim from them. But I don't think now it always happen if you are maintaining the proper margin of each and every security. Now, if you take property, around 60 is the average market percentage that you can lend. If the property value is 10 million, you can give only 6 million. Stocks, machinery around 50, right? And so we have certain standard ranges for that. You can't go beyond that. If you go beyond that, in such an instance, there can be a leeway very easily. Yes, one of you all wanted to ask question.
So in case of overdraft facility, that can happen. No, we have overdrawn over the limit we have allocated.
Yeah, so once again, it's your claim. No, you are giving something above the limit and without getting adequate security. So you have to have the consistent. When you are increasing the limit, you have to enhance your securities as well. So if this side is not moving up, it will keep on at it, and plus interest also. Then finally, there is a huge gap. To bridge this gap, if the customer says I can't bring securities, then you have to bridge with the joint and several guarantee. So even for that, if the director says I'm bankrupt, I can't pay a single cent, you will not be able to claim, right? So that's the risk that you see. I will sign for any guarantee. If you request me to sign for a guarantee of 1 billion, I will sign. But what is the point of signing a guarantee if I don't have assets? Now make sure that if you are taking directors as guarantors, check their assets as well. And normally today I can show you huge list of assets, and tomorrow if I want I can sell it. So at the point, if I know the banker is coming behind me, I will sell all my assets and convert into cash or send it to some other place, which you won't be able to say. So it happened in Golden case. Some of the directors, they thought that they will have a personal liability. Some officially they divorced from their marriage as well and transfer their all assets to their siblings. So these things can happen in a system which beyond our control. So what is more prudent when you are giving the OD increasing, gradually you have to enhance your security as well. Always security should be up than the loan. Normally what happens, bankers practice, it will either way, other way. loan value or OD value is higher than the security value. So then automatically we will have a gap. So at that time, if you have a personal guarantee, yes, you can exercise, but make sure that the guarantors, if the director says we don't have assets, once again, you will not be able to do anything out of that. Okay. Anything else?
Okay, sir. We have seen some instances where even though property is valued at a higher price, due to certain reasons, it cannot be sold at that amount. So in that case, also we can claim if we have guarantee.
Yeah.
No?
The point is where the property valuation, you have to value at the market price from an independent valuer. Now, if I'm going to do the valuation, right, if I have a relationship with that particular customer, sometimes I might value at a higher price. It happened to Pramuko Bank, right? They have overvalued the assets and given loans. Some 5 million worth of properties, they have value for 10 million and given loans for 7.5 million. So who is going to pay 7.5 million for a value? The actual value of property is 5 million. So automatically they went from itself, they were defaulting, and at the time of crisis, the NPL ratio went up to 80%. Right? So you have to be very careful in that aspect. Sometimes the property asset value always don't go down unless you have a reason. So overestimating, overpricing is not acceptable at all. All of us are that is why the specialized valuers are there. So certain products we don't know how to value. Now, if you have an import invoice, even if the import invoice might show undervalue, you will not get the overvalue, right? You can't get the real picture. Money laundering perspective, this happens. Now, in most of the money laundering, what happens there? Uh, Sometimes, if you want use, uh, you are going to import 10 laptops, right? Normally, a laptop value is, we say, 200,000. You valued it for 400,000. So then the 10 laptop will come at the price of 400, but the real value is 200,000, right? But you send additional 200,000 per machine out of the country. So that is a concern. So even from an invoice, import or export invoice, you can't arrive at the right price. So that is why bankers are supposed to take expert opinion when you want to take the right valuation. Your point is taken, definitely. If the value is going down, if you have, you can use somehow, if you have a guarantee, and if the guarantors can pay, now you can exercise an action against me, right? I will lose the case, you will win the case. Finally, if there is no assets for me to pay you, what happens? So I think that's what I told you at the beginning. You should not rely on the asset and give a facility, right? You should not rely on the security and give the facility. It should be you and me. We have a contractual relationship, right? If you feel okay, this is a strong contractual person, no problem. You don't have to depend on the security, because security up and down. Tomorrow I can say I have a property worth of 100 million, and tomorrow if the government decided to take this for a quarantine center, the value will go down like nothing. So then what I'm supposed to do? It's a common issue. It's a government decision. Government can take over any property in this country for a public benefit, right? So overnight the value will crash, but the capacity, repayment capacity of the customer will not happen in that speed. So that is why the KYC is important, right? Any questions?
So in that case, when we can, there is no legal restriction in that regard, no, where we can exercise two securities to
You
account.
can't exercise, you can get. Exercising only one, right? You will, your legal team will have to take a decision which security is the best security. Now mobiles and immobiles, you normally we don't mix it, we can't mix it. So if you feel okay, the property value has, now for an example, you have taken a property value, property and a personal guarantee of the directors. Now you realize, okay, property, they have sold a part of the property. Now there is no value for the property. Then at that point, you have to forget about the property. You have to go behind the guarantee. So you can take only one action for one facility, right? You can't take two actions by using two different securities. You can't go for parate and now if you go for mortgage bond action, anything excess you can have personal claim against the directors as well. And so problem concern is where at the point of litigation judgment comes whether these people can pay or not. So you can have a sound set of documents. That doesn't mean because your decision come, I will show you that your decision comes after 4 5 years or sometimes 10 years. At that time the customer would have gone for 6. He will not have a single cent. But if you are taking quick action, right, somehow he will pay at least a percentage. At least if you can recover your capital, that's more than enough. If you have earned money for 2 years out of your capital, at the point of recovery, if you can waive off all the balance interest and get the capital, that's still you have earned money. But bankers don't do that. They struggle for this 1 rupee or 2 rupee. Finally, they lose everything. So you have to have a very strong negotiation side. It's true that if you can get more recovery is fine, but once you get the capital, you can reinvest that and you can earn more money rather than blocking that money which you won't be able to get at all. So those are actually there is those these points are not in the theory. It's a common sense. If you have 100 rupees, if you have given that 100 rupees, and if the customer says no, we are not going to give this 100 rupees at all because you are demanding 20%. If you say okay, if you have earned this 20% for at least 2 months, okay, if you're going to forget about the interest, you give me my 100 rupees from the first day itself, you can let it, no? Then you can get that 20% from someone else rather than blocking this entire 100 rupees with the customer who is not going to pay at all. It's very, very basic things, right? So we can understand once you, I know that you all can have no that much of authority, but one particular day when you have the authority, think little bit different, at least try to get the capital, maximum capital, nothing, no waiver of capital. Interest, if you have, if it is a 6 year loan, 6 year loan, if you have got money for 3 years or 2 years, already it's profitable business for you. Then forget about the next 3 years and try to give a concession, then customer is also happy. I got a concession. Matter will be over. Going to litigation, filing action, wasting your time in courts. What a waste of time and money. Finally, you have to drag for years and years, and finally, you will get a judgment which you cannot exercise. What is the purpose? No point. Right? Any questions?
Okay, sir.
Normally, when we executing mortgage,
Yes, yes, sir. Shan,
hello.
go ahead.
So normally when we executing a mortgage bond, we take a lead of special
Yeah,
declaration too. For the mortgage bonds about
yeah,
150,000. In a case where we can't recover our dues from the mortgage property,
yeah.
how we claim our dues from the deed of declaration?
Yeah, the point is where it's a, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 47A requirement, no? Or the 85.
Yes,
47, no?
yes, sir.
47, yeah.
Yes.
So
What is your name? Yes.
47A, it's if the amount is above 150,000, you have to get a declaration. So this declaration is not a required document for you to register at the land registry. But as a practice, most of the bankers, they execute and they register along with the mortgage. So what it says, if the mortgage property is not adequate, or after selling this mortgage property, proceeds are if not adequate, even the bank can go for their personal assets. But as a bank, do you all take the list of personal assets of that particular customer?
No. No,
No, no, yes. So I have not seen in my career of 32 years where bank has gone under 47A and trying to take action for other properties. So it's a requirement under 47A to get a declaration, right? In most of the time, we have to ensure that whatever the original security what we get is adequate to recover outstanding, rather than trying to, because customer signs any document because he wants to get the facility, but finally it's we don't exercise. It's just a piece of paper. It's a mandatory requirement under 47A. So if you want to go for parate, if you are following the debt recovery provision, you have to have the declaration as well. That's it. So it's a, what I see is it's practically we are not using it when there is no adequate when the security is not adequate. Instead of that, we as a compliance requirement we get that document. Okay, Sean.
thank you, sir. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
Sampath. Okay. Sampath.
Okay, I just want to thank you. Thank you.
Okay, right. Can you all see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Can you all see me?
Yes, sir.
All right, fine. Okay. Now, practical issues in documentation. There are a lot of practical issues in documentation, right? Now, uh, sometimes you might say, okay, you have a very strong set of documentation, but when you go to litigation, it's very tough to use your documents, most of your documents, right? Because of the incomplete information in the document. Now, when you come to lending, these are key important points: safety, suitability, profitability. First, you have to think whether our careful analysis of the loan application, it must appear to be safe. So when you are analyzing a request of the customer, right, it has to be very you have to ensure that you are giving a facility for a secured safe. Otherwise, there is no point of sorry uh, if you're sorry, what happened? Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Sorry, unfortunately, when I move back to the slides, I can't see your screen. That's what I'm asking time to time whether you can see the slides. Right. So the safety, you have to ensure that you are lending to a safe business. So whether they have done a feasibility study and all sort of controls, and if you are satisfied with that only, you can start proceeding with that. Suitability, the purpose of the loan must be legal and desirable from the standpoint of the economy. So whether you should be able to understand whether this is a suitable facility for him. My income is 50,000, right? If I'm asking you to give me a 10 million vehicle loan, whether it's something required, it's not suitable for me. You know that halfway, not halfway at the beginning itself, I will not be able to pay. So don't proceed. And the profitability. Bank should not grant any facility which do not produce a profit to it. Maybe a thinner margin, but still you have to get a profit. You are not into charity, you are into business. Earn profits in ethical way is your responsibility, but profitability is important, right? So these are three important points that you all have to understand when you are considering a facility to a customer. Now, when you come to security documentation, right? So security is as important thing. The regulators impose to have securities, uh, but you should not never depend on security. Sound banking practice to lend against security is not. So don't lend against the security, lend against the customer, lend against his capacity, against his repayment capability, lend against his KYC. Unfortunately, when you start lending against the security, As Sampath told, in certain instances, the value will go down. You will not be able to recover anything from him because he don't have the basic qualifications to become a borrower of the bank. So be careful. Security is a must. I have no objection or no negative views on that because the regulators, they ask whether you have securities. But more important is not that. The earlier 3 points what I told you and your KYC. Know your customer with that particular person and his repayment capacity. Availability of legally unenforceable documents, right? Uh, Now I will explain practical difficulties of documentation. Now most of the time, uh, we don't. Parties are not identified properly. So if you are, for an example, if you are issuing an offer letter, if you are typing a loan agreement, or if you are typing a mortgage for a partnership, you have to address the partners, not the partnership name. So if you have not addressed the partners, your documentation is wrong. So it's technically you have consent. So you have to say partners A Silva B Pereira, partners of XY Enterprises. You can't address XY Enterprises uh, and the business address. So understand who is the legal person. Based on the legal person only, your documentation should be completed. Now, as bankers, do you take signatures on blank documents? Yes. Do you take signatures on blank documents? Kaushalya?
Sometimes he gets actually.
Yeah. Right. Chaturanga? Chaturanga? Shan?
No, sir. We don't take signatures on blank papers. No.
Okay. Incomplete documents? Now, for an example, a loan agreement is there, not typed. Do you take signatures? No. Sampath? What's your practice?
Usually we don't take say such.
Usually, unusually, you will, sometimes you might take.
Sometimes we have to take yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So I'm not blaming any of you all. That's the market practice sometimes because you have to give the service to the customer. Thinking that you have to give the service to the customer, you take the documents on blank, right? The problem is where now, um, and do you take initials? You take initials, loan agreement?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
If there's a correction, how do you address that? There's a
Uh,
correction.
we get the full signature, sir.
Okay. So if there's a correction, you get the full signature, not the initial. Right. What about the other? Amir, what's your practice?
Uh, at the end of every page, we get the customer's full signature, sir. If
Whether
it's a
it's
document,
whether it's continuous or not, you get the full signature
yes,
at the
full signature on each bottom of the page.
second page.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. Anyone else want to share their practices? Right. So the point is where I have seen in
Uh,
yes,
yes, in loan agreements, when there are to be filled in customer details like account number, his name, address, like that, those where we have filled or we have typed, we take a short signature.
yeah.
There's a
So
practice.
all over the places that you type anything, you get the signature. That's your point. Right. Now
In those
take
places, we take a short signature.
okay. Now if you take your loan agreement or the word of agreement, initially you have a cage where you get the date, name, address, some basic information, right? So these are after that only normally the agreement part starts. Am I correct? After the table, only you get the agreement and you get the installment, all those within how many.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So for this basic information is basic information, right? You're typing about the customer's name, right? And understanding is where now I have seen in certain instances, even for the customers loan application, loan request, bankers take initials. I'm filling my application and you're asking me to initial. I don't know. I can't understand. And even for the basic information, there is no requirement. If you have typed the basic information right, there's nothing for you to get initials. But in case of an agreement, with regard to the amount, with regard to the interest rate, with regard to the installment, yes, getting the customer's consent is right. But initial overall, in case of an agreement or a notarially not attested document, if you're getting an initial, it has either you have to prove that you have taken it for to get the customer consent or for a correction. So when you take initials all over the places, what normally happens, customer goes to the court, he will say, look here, this I got a blank document and requested me to initial everywhere, and they have typed subsequent. So then at that time you don't have any proof, right? What he says is right. You have taken initials and you have subsequently filled the gaps. So don't do that. If there's any correction over type with regard to the basic information, you get the initial. But after the agreement part, if you want to highlight the uh, amount, interest rate, and the installment and the security, you get the customer's initial or the full signature. Because you have to your organization follow your organization rules. I have no objection on that, but what I have seen in certain instances, when you take initials all over the place, customer straight away he will go and inform to the courts, they gave me a blank document, that is why I have placed initials everywhere. So at that time you don't have a defense. You can't say maybe that you all have not done, but you all have to agree with that, right? So then you have to come out with a reason why you took this initial. If you're going to say, okay, it is an overtype, no problem. It is just to indicate, to get reconfirmation with regard to the amount, interest rate, and installment, no problem. Otherwise, when you start getting initials all over the place, finally, you will not be able to justify in the courts. So be careful on that particular aspect. This is a mistake, common mistake. These are the reasons why you can't go for this debt recovery provision actions. Because under debt recovery, you have to have perfect documentation. If you don't have perfect documents, you will not be able to go for debt recovery and finalize your case within a short period. Incomplete documents. The majority of the documents are incomplete. Either you all have not taken signatures, either you all have not. Give me 1 minute. I will take a piece of paper and show it to you how to get the signatures. So this is a 4-page document, right? If your documents are bound every 4 pages, 4 pages, 4 pages, your requirement is to get the full signature on the 4th page, right? Then every 4th page you are getting the signature. But as Amir stated, they have the practice of getting the signature every 2nd page. So the point is where you don't have to get signatures all over the places, but acceptable practice, if it is a 4-page document, on the 4th page. If it is 2-page document, it's on the 2nd page. Plus, if the document is not notarially attested, a notary is not going to give a confirmation, important points like interest rate, amount, security, you can get the initials to show that the customer has consented for these rates, right? So yeah.
Sir, does it only apply for loan agreements, loan forms?
Any document, can you give any example, particular example you're talking here?
Say, like if we have agreements, we normally get initials on each page and the full signature on the last. So,
Yeah, any agreement is the same. Every fourth page, if it is not a material notarially executed document, now are you talking about the common seal, or are you talking about just signatures?
just signatures.
Best would be every fourth page to get the full signature of the customer, or if it is 2 page, the full signature. But Amit's suggested is good. But sometimes you might have a practice of getting the initials every every second page, and have the common seal along with the 2 signatories or directors and director and secretary on the last page. So it depends on your organization practice. The point is where you now when you place a full signature is there, but if you place an initial, your initial, if I want, I can place it. So there is a possibility someone else can substitute another page, because if your full signature is there, I can't do it because it's your full signature, no? But initial, when you refer it to an expert, I don't think that they can identify whether this is your initial or whether I have placed your initial. But in case of a signature, if your signature I have placed, experts can recognize that, right? So as a much precautionary aspect, what I can say is best to get the full signature every second page, and finally with the common seal. So I have seen, as you said, normally the companies, what they do is their agreements, they have the initial, but it has to be a very clear initial, right? Not just a small note to see who has initialed it. And along with that, finally the full signature. What is more important, another person should not be able to substitute a page to that document by removing one of the initial pages. So this rule is for all the documents, not only for one document, right? It's for several documents, any agreements that you are signed from the company. So if you have a practice, if your legal have given instructions, is fine. But if you have adapted your own practice, try to discuss with the authorities and try to bring this rule into, because it will add more controls to your document, no? Finally, then you know who has initial, who has signed, and more responsibility will be there for that person as well. And on a later date, you know, he can understand, okay, this is a document that I have initial, I have signed. But when you place your initial, I also can't understand whether this is my initial or someone has placed. So you're leaving room for an outsider to include another page if there's any concern by when you have the initial.
So, sir, if you are getting an initial on a page, that means that see, if I'm putting an initial, does it mean that I have read the content, or it's
Yes. So when you sign, uh, normally I know that you all don't read. That is why, do you all have a practice before it comes to the top person to sign, whether it goes through a process where, now for an example, in our company, our bank, if the board of directors are signing it, if we will say a new agreement with a company where they are giving some services or something, so we have two processes where we have delegated certain agreements to management, and there is another process where it goes to the board. So whatever the process, whether it goes to the management or to the board, it has to be signed off by the legal, compliance, and risk. So they will see whether the all material requirements to protect the interest of the bank is there. So when I'm placing my signature, I'm placing on behalf of the bank. So they give the sign off. Don't worry. Risk is there, have checked, compliance have checked, legal has checked. There's nothing negative. Then it's a matter of placing my signature. So then the point is where whoever who is going to sign will not read the pages. Some agreements you get 50 pages, 25 pages, 100 pages. How can we sit and read? So that is why that process is there. The person who is signing off that particular process must sign off by after reading. So
Thank
simply answering your question, if I'm placing a signature on my document, the law will expect that I have read the document and signed. Not reading is not a legal problem. It's my problem. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. Anything else? Right. So most of the time, the incomplete documents is the biggest problem that I see in the practice. You have weaknesses in your document. Sometimes the stamping is not done. Sometimes the registration is not done on time. I will discuss this when I'm taking each and every security separately. Proper procedure is not followed when executing stamping registration, right? So these are important points that you should know when you're executing stamping. Is a requirement. Registration, we have to register within 21 working days, whether register of companies or register of lands. We have to register within 21 working days, and in case of register of motor vehicles, once again we have to send it as soon as possible. Either it can be 1 day registration as well. Now this selecting the wrong procedure for recovery. Now this is important, right? Most of the banks you all are prefer to go in the money recovery process. The reason is where your previous practice was the same. Now this here you get the recovery of debt, right? So there is a more unique, more focused um, set of rules for banks, which was introduced in 1990. Only the banks can do, not even a finance company. uh, Mr. N.U. Javardhan, he was the governor at that time. He wanted a speedy recovery method because the banks are lending depositors money. If a case is going to drag for years and years and years, your time value of money will go down, right? And as a result, and the more cost will be there, and finally you will not be able to convert your security into cash. Now, if you take this particular diagram, future value 3 months 10%, today's value will be 97,600. In 6 months it will be 95,250. 1 year 90,100. 2 years 83,300. 3 years 77,000. 4 years 71,500. 5 years 66,600. So if you have lent 100,000, after 5 years, based on this diagram, you will ended up with only 66,600. So automatically there is a loss for the financial institution. So to avoid that, this set of rules were introduced. So my idea is where rather than waiting for 5 years and getting 66,600, today getting 6 months time or in 1 year's time getting 90,000 and 100 is more prudent, because you can relent 90,100 for acceptable percentage and earn money. After 5 years, what you are getting is 60,000, 66,600. And if you are going to start lending, almost 30,000 less than the original amount. And the loss of income is also you have to take into consideration. So now normally what happens here, that's another concern that I have. Now when you, how do you cost your deposit, average deposit rates? How do you cost your average deposit rates? Now when you take deposits, we'll say fixed deposit, you in today's context, Sometimes you might be taking at 6, sometimes you might be at 5.75, 0.5%, 5.25, 5.5, 4%, 4.5. How do you take, normally what you do is your cost of funds, you will average these rates and say, okay, this is our average cost of funds. We say under this average, it's around 4.5 because you have taken for 4% as well as you have taken for 6%. So we'll assume that it's 4.5. Now, when a customer comes, if your standard margin is where you keep 1% above your average cost, so you will lend it at 5.5 because your average cost is 4.5. But actually, if you are lending the amount deposits what you have taken at 6% and lending at 5.5, there is a loss. So correctly speaking, what I see is the banks, they have to have a mechanism to lend based on the deposit. If you have taken a deposit for 6%, you have to have a mechanism to lend that at a 1% higher than 6%. So sample is 7%, right? So instead of that, then only you will get the correct picture, how much you have earned profit, rather than making it average 5.5, 4.5 and earning 1%. For then your 6% deposit is creating a 5% loss for you. So so that's an important requirement in way forward. You'll have to think, taking deposit to deposit and trying to understand what is the earning out of that particular deposit. Then you will have a better margins than currently, right? So sometimes you take a huge one at a higher rate and at the same time average one at low price, and you average it and say, okay, this is our cost is this, but your actual cost will be much more higher than what you are getting. So there finally there is no profit for you. So my advice is, as I told you, as much as possible, try to settle earlier as possible. Convert that into cash and relent, and you will get a much better benefits than dragging a case for 5 years and getting almost 30% or 35% lower than what you gave it to the person. So you're losing 2 points, capital reduction, as well as you're losing the interest what you should have gained during that 5 years. Now there are different points to recover debts, different options. Settlements, mediation board, money recovery actions, debt recovery actions, parat execution, mortgage bond actions, creditors winding up. I think out of these, my number one preference is settlements. If you can offer a good settlement, customer will settle. And if you are demanding for this 5,000, 10,000 or 100,000, looking at the size of the liability, you're losing in a big way. So go for settlement, continuously settlement. Fail in that, only you go for the other options. So mediation board is a process requirement. If the amount is it 500,000 now, less than 500,000, that you have to refer it to the mediation board. Yes, Sampath, is it 500,000 now?
I have no idea about that.
Anyone who has an idea? If I'm not mistaken, it's I think 500,000 or 250,000.
No, it's 500,000, sir.
Okay, 500,000. Earlier it was 25,000. The majority of the cases refer to the mediation. So it's finally most of the time you get a non-settlement, right? Mediation is an intermediary who is supporting the two parties, bank and the customer, to come to a settlement. So if there's a settlement, okay, you can enforce it off records and you can proceed. If there's a non-settlement, when you're filing action, you have to file the non-settlement mediation non-settlement form as well. Money recovery, that's the most of the cases are filed. Almost 98% cases are filed under money recovery. Then the debt recovery. I think settlements and the debt recovery are the most important two processes that all banks should focus. Then you have the parate auction. Once again, it comes from the debt recovery as well. So it's a speedy method. And then if you can't go for parate auction, you will have to refer to the mortgage bond auction. And then the final option, as a creditor, you can move that company for a winding up. So normally this is not a good method, pushing a company for winding up because they have not paid your liabilities. But it's a, when you start say that when you are going for a winding up, following day the customer will come and settle your loans, because I don't want to lose my business because of your company liability, because I have other more liabilities for the others and I have a huge business. So when you say, okay, we are filing action against for winding up, straight away tomorrow I will come and settle your balances. So it's a method that you can use it, uh, and it's an entitlement for under the Companies Act as well. Creditors winding up. But banks hardly they use it. But if you want, you can try out and see where you have hardcore customers where they are not willing to pay. Why not try and see? Um, Sometimes it might work as well. So Mediation Board Act 4 of 2011 Section 2, it's the amount is more than 500,000 in value. You have to refer to the mediation board, right? Steps in legal action. Any questions up to now?
So I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
What's the difference between money recovery and debt recovery?
Money recovery and debt recovery. Yes, I will explain. Money recovery is a normal process that you go. Now you file a plaint, right? And through fiscal, summons will be served. For an example, I have defaulted in your bank. I have obtained a facility 500,000. So initially you send me reminders letters. I have not got any reminder letters. Okay, we'll say still I'm not going to pay. Then you send me the letter of demand and wait for 21 days and you go and file a case in the district court. So along with you will prepare a plaint saying that on such and such a date I have open an account, and subsequently I have requested for a facility, and I have obtained this, but for this particular facility I have given this security, and on this particular on as at this particular date there is a capital outstanding this amount, interest outstanding this amount, and now it's due, we want the money. So that's the plaint. Along with the plaint, the summons will be served to me, and once the summons are served, I've given an opportunity to file my answer, right? Once the answer is filed, there is a pre-settlement process. Both parties will have to negotiate and see whether you can settle it. If not, you go for the trial. Then the trial will be conducted 4 to 5 times, or more than that, or less than that. And we have to submit our presentations by way of written submission. And when the judge will go through the written submission, and based on the evidence which are highlighted in the written submission, they will say, okay, the bank is winning the case, right? So then after that, you have to execute the rest. I think if I'm not mistaken, there's a 2-year period to execute the writ. After the writ is executed, through fiscal, you all can seize my assets. That's the money recovery process. So if you take from start to the end, it will take 5 to 6 years. So it's a lengthy process. Normal process that all the banks are using for majority of their cases. Debt recovery, I will explain in this particular process when I'm discussing the rest of the slides. Right, so the point is where normally to serve the summons, sometimes it might take more than 1 year. To file my answer, we'll say 2 days. Even 2 days, normally a district court will take up a case every 6 months after. So another 1 year to file my answer. Settlement, another 2 days, another 1 year. Trial, we say 4 days. 4 days, another 1.5 years. 4.5. Judgment, another 6 months. 5 years. And the execution of it, sometimes due to different reasons that you all have not executed the risk, it took another year, 6 years. So after 6 years, if you're going to try to, I'm a default customer where I have gone bankrupt, I have lost everything. After 6 years, if you're going to come and try to get anything from me, there's nothing available with me, right? So this is what normally happens in a system. So the time frame, just a 500,000 case took 5 years for you to get the judgment. Even after getting the judgment, sometimes you will have to write off the facility. So that is why the settlements are important. Debt recovery provisions are important. I will explain what is debt recovery and I'm explaining the future slides. Okay. Is it clear what I told to you?
Yes, sir.
Right. Fine.
Sir, do you explain in the next few slide that creditors winding up?
It's there at the latter part.
Okay, sir.
That if you go through the last few slides, it's there. Winding up, creditors winding up. It's there in the Companies Act, provisions are there. Creditors winding up. If you download the Companies Act of Sri Lanka, I can't exactly remember the section, but it gives you the instructions for when you come to company winding up. There are different methods: voluntary winding up by courts, winding up by creditors. So the creditors winding up, you are a creditor, you are a bank, you are a creditor, so you can take action to wind up the company. Right. Then comes steps in legal action to recover debt. The amount owed, this must be properly calculated with the supportive documents. So what is the actual amount that you are going to claim should be there with that proper documents. Letter of demand, it is necessary to send a debtor a letter of demand through a lawyer claiming payment and informing that failing which litigation will commence. So normally 14 days or 21 days will be given. In the absence of any response from the customer, you can proceed with legal action. Time limits, the bank must ensure that debt is not prescribed. So it's very important. I have seen in certain instances, sometimes the debts are prescribed. Time has lapsed, right? So that normally a time should not lapse. Before the lapse, you should be able to, you have to take action to file your cases. So I have highlighted some example loans. If you have given a loan 6 years from the last date of payment, because in case of a loan, you will have a loan agreement. If you have a loan agreement, you can take action. The maximum period you can stay without filing is 6 years. So if, for an example, last payment, now I have taken a loan in, we'll say 2015, right? I have defaulted your loan on the same year, we said 2015 December. So if you want to take me to courts, you have to take me within 6 years. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21st, 21 before December 31st. Because I have defaulted 2015 December 31st. You have a period of 6 years from 2015 December 31st to 2021 December 31st to file action. If you file action after 2021 December 31st, your loan, your claim is prescribed, which you can't file a case. Check 6 years from the check return. So the date start from the last payment or return. 6 years from the last date of payment. Now, for an example, I took the loan in 2015. I defaulted in 2020 December. So your 6 years start from 2020 December, not from 2015 December. So you have another years from 2020 December to file action. Mortgages 10 years from the last date of payment, permanent overdraft 6 years from the last date of payment. So normally if you have a strong agreement with a security, we consider 6 years. TOD 3 years from the last date of payment, casual OD 3 years from last date of payment. So sometimes the permanent overdue TOD, it depends on how you are going to define it. If you say POD, yes, you have more comfort. You can wait for 6 years. But if you're going to say it's a TOD, then you will lose the comfort by 3 years where you have to take action. COD, maximum lowest is the 3 years, which you have to file action. Yes. Any questions on that?
So COD means without any documentation that we have granted.
Yes. Now there is a check of mine for, we'll say, child's education. I wrote a check for 50,000, but there is only 49,000 in my account. So I will request my bank. This is a school fee check. Don't return it. Give me a overdraft for 1,000 rupees. It's a very casual, normally a small amount. Banks, they give assistance depending on the pay of the check. If it is the insurance, if the doctor's payment, school, bid bond of some kind of if you're bidding for a big project. So it's normally banks, they consider and they give casual OD even in certain instances without the customer's consent, because they feel this is important, right? And therefore they in order to assist the customer, they give this kind of facilities. Okay, now the time is 3:20. So I will give you a 25 minutes break. Come back by 3:45. No? Yes, 3:45. Okay, we'll meet once again at 3:45. Questions up to now before I proceed?
So in case of casual OD, do we is it necessary to get the customer concurrence with regard to paying the checks a small amount, or
It depends, once again, depends with your KYC with the customer. Know your customer, right? If you know him well, if you have a good relationship, if you know that this is a genuine concern, because now there can be certain instances where the amount is very small and he is not in a position to send you a mail or a written letter. So in such an instance, you don't have to do it. But in case if when you go to courts, if the customer says, okay, without my consent that you all have paid, normally the understanding is where customer can object to say that I never told them and now they have paid. So that is why we take a concurrence or a letter from the customer to requesting him to pay this particular check. But if you can justify your position why you paid this check, it's an insurance company or it's an important payment for the customer, that's more than enough. Plus the law accepts once you issue a check, it's my responsibility to ensure that there is money in my account. So we always say don't issue checks without having adequate money. So I have a responsibility to ensure that there is adequate money from my issuer check from my account. So simply whether you get the customer's letter or not, customer is liable to pay that. So you are justifying your position. If I have given you a letter, it will be easy for you to justify your position. And at the same time, if you can justify you paid because of this is an important payment for the customer, not for you, once again, court will realize, okay, what you have done is right. You all wanted to protect the customer. Now the customer says you have not got the customer's consent. So from a fair point of view, if I'm the judge, I will definitely take your side, no? So that is why that's more than enough. But to avoid unnecessary problems, we always say to get a written confirmation or an email confirmation from the customer, then it's very clear. So you are going to say that at your request, we have paid. So then if you have not taken the letter, you can't say that at your request we have paid. Then you have to say in your plan to say, since it's a payment to the insurance company and he was a good customer for so many years, while looking at his past history or the past transaction, bank took a decision to pay because it's an insurance payment. So your wording of your plaint will be a little bit different if you have not taken the consent. But understand, always it's not possible for you to get the customer's consent in writing, especially in today's kind of context. So I'm not going to say no for you don't have to take customer's consent. You have to take the customer's consent, but you can have a variation depending on the situation and depending on the amount and depending on the pay. So the best would be to take a written consent prior to paying or a covering type of approval. What you can do, you can refer, he can give a call and you request him even subsequently refer that particular call and send him a request letter. Now today you can prepare any letter and you can WhatsApp. Once it's WhatsApp, you can print it. So today you don't have to go to a branch and deliver it and place your acceptance seals. All those are now outdated. So try to get a most speedier method and you should be able to prove that this is his request. That's more than enough. Okay. Anything else,
Okay,
Sampath?
sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. Then basic points, whom to sue. A human being, business entity or a legal entity who is liable for paying the debt has to be clearly identified before suing. As I told you, now you can't sue a partnership. You can't sue a sole proprietorship. You have to sue individual or a company, right? So if you select the wrong person, your documents are wrong. If you select the wrong, you address a wrong person, your documents are wrong. Proper court in action must be instituted in a proper court in line with the contract and the nature of the transaction. So if you want to go into the commercial high court, you can't go to the district court. For the cases where you have to go to the district court, you can't go to commercial high court or magistrate courts. So your lawyers must understand what is the jurisdiction. Normally the district where you entered into the contract is considered as the jurisdiction. If it's a Colombo case, it has to be filed in the Colombo courts, right? So normally the lawyers, they know what to do it, but these are important. So if you file in the wrong court, what you can do is you can withdraw subject to filing at the correct court. So judges, they accept that. Now, summary list of steps for the money recovery action. I think this is one of the questions that you all inquired. At that time, I explained you. File legal action in courts. It's a money recovery. Serve summons, file answer by the defendant. Trial, judgment, decree. So before the trial, you have a pre-settlement type of a process there as well. Trial, judgment, decree, execution of decree. After the judgment, the decree will be served. That's the license for you to proceed. When the execution, after the execution, then through fiscal you can acquire whatever the assets. Then you can go for auction, court auction, recover the debt and the cost. So very simple set of steps are here. Very colorful set of steps are there, but practically it's very difficult to exercise these steps. So those who have worked for legal as a witness, those who know about the process, they know how difficult is to follow this set of rules and win a case. Finally, it depends on winning a case is fine. Victory, because the judges always thinks this is public money. When you are giving judgment thinking that it's public money, they more favorable, they favorably look at the banker's perspective, right? But it doesn't mean that you can win the case, but if you don't have any assets. I have seen in certain instances where sometimes the fiscal officer and the bank officers try to go and seize the goods. There's nothing. Old set is set, old fridge, a TV, very old, cannot be used. So what the purpose of seizing those stuff? most of the instances, the banks, they don't seize those stuff because there is no use at all. You can't do anything with that. What are we going to do? They will have a more value than us taking those instruments and trying to sell it in the market, right? So in most of the cases, banks, they don't go for this fiscal seizing. Finally, you don't get anything out of that. Detailed steps to follow in money recovery action. Banks file the plate with all documents against the defendant. So I told you, you have to prepare a plate, and along with the plate, you have to file the documents against the defendant, serve summons on defendants to file an answer to the plate. So he will state his position in his answer, what really went wrong, and what he will have a chance also to explain his position, because we are explaining from our end. The court have to listen to their end as well. So finally, based on the evidence what we have in front of us, the judge will take a decision. If there are more evidence to the bank, we will win. If there are more evidence to the defendant, they will win. Since we are initiating the action, we are called the plaintiff. Against whom the action is filed is the defendant. So if the customer is filing action against the bank, customer will be the plaintiff and we will be the defendant. So always the first person who goes to courts is considered as a plaintiff. Against whom? Defendant. Because we don't know who will win. It can be the plaintiff, it can be the defendant. The decision is based on the balance of probability of evidence. So finally, the judge will put all these evidence into a scale and he will see who will have more evidence. The person who is having more evidence will win the case, right? So until the judgment comes, I don't know whether the bank will win or the customer is going to win. So if we have evidence only, we should go to courts. Otherwise, they will win. So if you're not happy with the basic first level of court, district courts, you can make it a application to the appeal courts. If you're not happy with that also, you can go to the Supreme Court as well. So there are different application level, but what the biggest challenge, not to refer it to a court and settle the matter. I think referring to a court and paying a huge fee for lawyers and spending your time, all good for lawyers, right? But from a banker's perspective, you are losing a lot of money. Biggest challenge what you have, I think it is should be one of your KPIs without referring to court to settle it. Because court should be the last option. I will never ever recommend that from a banker's perspective. Always you have to consider the customer, because you have earned a lot of money from the customer. And it's a fact, right? You can't say that we have not earned. Why not? When the customer is in a bad wicket, why don't you support them? It's good for you to take me to courts. Finally, I will have to spend money for my lawyer as well. So then I would have given this money to you for a settlement. So I want to maintain my prestige, or I want to maintain certain things, then I will also try to push the case, right? But understand now, fortunately, the bankers are a little bit fortunate on that aspect. As I told, the judges think that this is public money. Therefore, we have to look a little bit favorable, not favorable, I would say, from a depositor's point of view, and you all get judgments, favorable judgment. But if the judges know what's really happening inside the processes, documentation process and the practices, they will always go against the banks. Now, if you see, most of the Supreme Court judgments are against the banks. But they know that the bankers are acting negligently without proper due care. And sometimes the technical things, they don't know. I'm explaining to my all the lecturing forums, when I'm getting retired, I'm going to appear on behalf of the clients, because I know the weaknesses of the bankers. I'm not going to do it, I'm just joking. Because I know that the mistakes happen inside the banks, right? not filing, selecting the proper person, not having the proper signatories on the right places. Now, when you are issuing the offer letter, there has to be a sequence. First, my request, then you assess it, then you go for the you assess it. Once it's done, you have to issue me the offer letter, and I will sign the offer letter, right? Then you get the documentation and grant the loan. But I have seen in certain instances where the offer letter comes after the settlement. So what you have to understand, customer will come behind you until you grant the loan. Once you grant the loan, you have to go behind the customer. So don't allow customer to where you have to go behind the customer. Get everything done. That doesn't mean the customer should come behind you. Today is a open market, competitive market. There are different financial institutions are offering different packages. So be explain your requirement straightforward at the very first day. Then you will get more businesses. Then he knows what is the requirement. Otherwise, what will happen? I know when you come to property mortgages, sometimes the customers, they blame the lawyer, they blame the bank. They are not telling at one time. Once you bring this particular extract, they ask for another extract. Once that extract is forwarded, you ask for a deed. So you are just wasting money, your money as well as customers' time and money. So don't do that. Be a professional. Try to have a professional touch and give them the correct information. And if you can't approve the loan, say like we can't approve the loan. That's it. And the customer knows what is your stand, rather than dragging and pushing here and there without taking a decision, right? So it's very important for you to understand that you have to have your own standard, and depending on the size of the organization, you have to take the call. Because losing a customer today is not advisable. But at the same time, once you treat a customer well, he will cross-sell your product. He will sell your good name in the market. Then he will bring canvas customers. So simply the bankers don't understand that aspect. They think the customers should come. No, today's market is very open. Even they go for 0.1% difference. It's a huge amount for a large facility. So today the bankers have lost control at all. Right? Luckily, we are surviving because of this system. Whatever the system, economic system, there is a difference between deposits and lending. Right? If you reduce your overheads, you can maximize your profit. And if you maintain your NPL at a certain rate, you will earn profit. So that's the mechanism. Your margins will come down further and further. Total profits will come down, but still bankers can earn profits. That's the gap between deposits and lending, right? Not only one product, not only deposits, and we have combination. Banks have combination, pawning, leasing, credit card, right? Other services, LC, other different instruments. So they have collected profits for that as well. So the system, whatever the system, economic system, bank will earn profits, but it's going to be very challenging for all of us. So you saw recently the profits were declared. Almost all the banks have, even in a crisis situation, all the banks have increased their profits a considerable amount, more than 30% comparing to the last quarter or last year's similar quarter. So it clearly shows that we are in a good market, but only way that we can further improve through our service. Right? If you give the proper service, right, you will get the required team customers into you. Right? Any questions? Right.
I have one question.
Yes.
In case of money recovery action, is there any requirement that letters we are giving, the summons we are sending to the customer, that should to be hand over anyway, should be hand over to customer? No?
It's served by the fiscal, not by you. You all have to file in the courts with the registrar. Registrar will appoint us fiscal fiscal will have to serve the summons. So it's not your duty. Filing the summons along with your plaint is the responsibility of that particular legal department. The fiscal have to serve the summons. Fiscal must confirm that to the courts that he has served the summons. So in case if the person is not there in that particular address, sometimes the fiscal will paste that summons on the front door or the gate or whatever. That's also acceptable. අලවා බාර දෙනවා කියලා තමයි ඒකට කියන්නේ සිංහලෙන්. When if the customer is not there in the sense he has gone for office or but still there is evidence to see that he is living in that particular place, then at that time අලවා බාර දෙනවා කියලා එක තාප්පේ අලවලා එනවා. ඒක fiscal confirm කරොත් courts වලට that is also accepted. You all can't do that. Sometimes with you can, I can't remember whether with court permission whether you can register post it. I'm not sure about that, but that is normally the fiscal have to hand over or paste it on the last given address. So the point is where when you paste it, sometimes the summons will not get served to the party, so then you can move for ex parte judgment, ex parte trial. You will get the judgment without any problem because there is no other party. Still, once again, once you start exercising your rights from the writ, you will not be able to get anything. So winning a case is not the biggest challenge here. As I told you, without going to courts, getting the recovery from the customer. Yes, anything else?
So in letter of demand, it should be served to the customer.
Yes, it has to be served in the sense, normally it has to be served with under registered post cover. When you are filing your plaint, you have to attach a copy of the letter of demand along with the postal article. So the point is where now, finally you have to demand your money from the customer, and if after you demand, if he is not paying only, your right will exercise. But if the registered letter got returned, right, so it's clearly it says that the letter of demand is not served. In such an instance, you can't go and file your case because you know that it got returned, but you are pasting the original postal article along with the letter of demand. Physically බැලුවොත් ඒක ඇත්තටම serve වෙලා නැහැ. So it's wrong to file because you have got that letter of demand returned back from the post. I think you all have to prove that you have posted. In certain instances, judge can call for the postmaster as well. So if the postmaster says, okay, this letter of demand is not served, that's the end of your story. You can't proceed further.
So is there any requirement that should be handed to only to the customer? Can anyone else can that the vendors can take
The
it?
point is where we don't know. We have a signature. The requirement is the letter is delivered to the given address, last given address. So whether we don't know whether the customer is taking or his spouse is taking or child is taking, domestic is taking, those are not material. Requirement is whether this is served, because postman will confirm whether this is handed over to the correct address. That's it.
Sir, in case of the court, the case filed by a bank, but if the court gave the judgment against the bank, do that bank has to can the customer claim the expenses he incurred because of this?
Yeah, normally when they are filing an answer, they can say that their cost as well. Sometimes they can raise a counterclaim as well, right? Counterclaim, then we have to post on the counterclaim. He can say there's a reputational damage, and for the reputational damage, he has to pay this. Bank has to pay this particular amount. So many things can come from the customer side as well. So that is why the bank can appeal for the higher court without paying all those things. It's a judgment at a lower court. So if that judgment is superseded by a higher court, then no problem. Then you don't have to pay. Right. So if you get a favorable judgment as the bank at the higher court, then you are done. Then if the customer is not happy with that appeal court only, he can go to the Supreme Court. So if you are happy, normally what happens in a small case, it's settled at the district court. Customer bank will win. Sometimes the customer will pay, or they don't want to go further for a higher court because the cost is very high, cost and the time. Now I don't know whether I explained this to you all. This is in 2014 for a company, a Sri Lankan lawyer, top high commercial lawyers, their fees. I don't want to mention his name. I'm not mentioning his name as well. He's one of the leading commercial lawyer. This is in 2015, right? He charged for half an hour consultation 1.5 million from a company. 1.5 million for half an hour consultation. So you can see the prices. This is in Sri Lankan prices in 2015, right? So most probably by today, it might be 2.5 million for a half an hour, but the matter is sorted. This is for a consultation, not for appearing, right? For appearing, normally the charges are charges in the sense now, for an example, if the senior lawyer is getting 1 million for a per appearance, his junior will get 1/3. That is 333,000 rupees. That's standard. That's the fee, right? So those are if you want to hire the best person, that's the cost for that. So it's not a small amount, right? Right. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Right. Right. Hope you can see the slides.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Serve
Yes.
summons shall be served on the defendant. It's a file action. When the plaint is filed, if the defendant admitted the claim, it is good for the bank and can move for a settlement and undertaken and agreed in court settlement. So best would be you go for a court settlement. Now, initially, if the customer agreed for a settlement without going to courts, encourage that. That's the best way. But even when you go to courts, always try to push the customer for a court settlement. When you enter into a court settlement, you can't withdraw from that. So if you are not going to pay 2 or 3 consecutive payments, automatically your case it will be executed without a trial. So then you are losing everything. As a result, customers somehow they try to pay. So best would be even lengthy period you enter a settlement with the customer in courts because you have signed in the front of the courts. You fear now even though I'm a lawyer, I don't want to go to courts as a defendant. I always make sure that I maintain road traffic rules 100%. When I'm going outstation, I make sure that I always goes with the limits because finally it's not right for us to if I was a normal layman, the situation would have been different, right? And I always make sure that I don't go against the rule as almost 100%. So that's important, right? Right. When plaint is filed, the defendant admitted the claim. Good bank for settlement. So go for a settlement. So the point is where when you sign in front of a court, you have the fear. If you're going to default it, what happens? So then whether the judge will blast you. Then now in certain instances, when you apply for foreign visa, Sometimes they will ask whether you have been charged against a court for a criminal offense, for a civil offense. So at that time you have to disclose what is, yes, this is the criminal offense, this is the civil offense. So I don't think none of you all will like to enter that kind of a statement unless you say no, right? If the debtor makes a counterclaim, in his answer, the bank has to file a replication. So if if we are going to claim 100,000 plus 25,000 interest, if the defendant comes with a counterclaim, if he is also going to claim 250,000 plus another amount, it's a counterclaim. So at that time, we have to file a document called replication. When the debt is stipulated, it will move for a trial, which take time to finalize the matter. So once it goes to trial can drag in the sense it's not due to any lapses in the court process, it's the defendant or the plaintiff. Now for an example, the defendant, he don't want to come next day, so he will request his lawyer to say defendant is not well, so he's submitting a medical. On the next following day, the defendant lawyer is not well, or he has gone for another claim. Third day, once again, the defendant is having a funeral, right? Fourth day, it can be the plaintiff will have another problem. So nothing to do with the courts. Courts is willing to take the case, but the parties can drag the case. It's just to count the time. There's nothing more than that. So these are not beneficial for any of the parties. Defendant will have to pay the lawyer, you have to pay your lawyer, and you have to send one of your officers. Full day, once you go to courts, it's the full day time, gaining nothing. Sometimes halfway you have to stop your evidence. Then the following day, once again, you have to start the evidence. So it's a long process. What is an ex parte? As I told you, when the defendant is not there, and if the fiscal confirms that the summons have been served to the defendant, you can move for ex parte. An ex parte decree is obtained by the plaintiff, the bank, in case when the defendant is not present and not presented at courts. So the summons are served, he has to file his answer. He is not coming to courts to file answer. So at that time, plaintiff can move, request the court to move ex parte trial. So it's a one way. Your witness will conduct the evidence, and after that you will have to file the written submission. Based on the written submission, it's a one way. This side is out, no more. Based on your evidence, judge will decide, okay, with this, whether this is right or wrong. Then he will give an ex parte order. So even at that time, if after the ex parte order is given, once you send the fiscal decree, at that time there is a time frame for him to enter into the case and proceed. If he is going to prove, due to these reasons, I was not there, I was sick and I went for a surgery overseas. At that time this was served, I was not there. The court will listen, and a chance will be given for him to reopen the case and either go for a settlement or go for a trial. Right. Then comes special laws to recover debt by banks. These are the laws that I was talking about, debt recovery provision laws applicable for bankers to recover debt. Right. Now, Act of 4 of 9. Any questions up to now? So the rest of
So in case of court settlement, there are no charges to be paid for the lawyers, no?
No, concern is where lawyer, in the sense now, if ex-lawyer is appearing on behalf of your customer has to pay a fee for that appearance. After that, there is no charges. So it depends on, now it can be a situation where that particular lawyer want to charge something from that client. So sometimes the lawyer might say, look here, I pushed you for a settlement and you got a good option, and give me this much, because we don't know, there's no standard for those. It's all about the lawyer and how he charge. So if the lawyer says in case of a settlement you have to pay 10% out of the settlement, then he has to pay. But from a bank's point of view, if you are hiring outside lawyers, they will have to pay. You all have to pay their daily appearance fee only. There is no fee for them. But I don't know about the defendant party. Sometimes if the lawyer says you have to pay 10,000 rupees for the settlement, in such an instance the client has to pay that. Okay.
In case of court settlement, there is no appearing in the court, no? Is there
Why
appearing in the?
not? They are appearing in the courts. The settlement will be read in front of the judge, and it will be noted by the secretary, and it will be recorded, and after that the record has to be signed by both parties. So in front of open courts only it will happen. Before that, if you have entered into a settlement and if you have filed through a motion, if you have called the case through a motion and it's a matter of just filing it in the courts, then you don't have to take it. It will not be a lengthy process. But both parties have agreed the terms, then it's just filing in the courts. So normally, when in case of a trial date, if you are taking this settlement, it will be open court. Terms will be entered by the secretary, the court secretary, and finally, both parties have to sign. Right.
There is no trial there is no trial in that case, no?
No, there is no requirement of a trial. But in case if the defendant is going to default 2 or 3 installments, straight away, once again, there is no trial. Straight away, the case will go for a writ. So the defendant is taking a little bit risk on that. If you know that he can pay continuously, no problem. But if you have any doubts, and he will not be able to push for a trial thereafter.
Okay. During that process, customer has to pay the loans, pay the loans, no?
According to the settlement, yes. So for an example, if he has agreed to pay 4,000 rupees for a month, in line with the terms, he has to pay.
Until that court settlement is received.
Yes,
done,
yes. So if you want, he can finish it early as much as possible. Now I agree to pay in 20 installments. If I want, I can pay it in 10 installments, and I can get a full settlement letter from the bank, and I can file in the courts and inform that I have done my payment. That's it. Then the matter is over. So that's what I told you. The biggest challenge for you not to go to courts and get a settlement. That's the challenge. I know it's the difficult thing, but that is what we have to push today. Going to court is the worst thing. It's as a lawyer, lawyers will get money, but finally, from the bank's perspective and from your customer's perspective, you're wasting your time and money, which is not acceptable. Right? So as a lawyer, I can say, okay, you bring much cases for me because then it's money for me. But from economic perspective, from your time perspective, we are not getting. So as lawyers, what we have to do is initially we have to push for a settlement. Now, when you push for that kind of a settlement only, okay, then everyone will be happy. So unfortunately, even the legal profession has become a little bit with the competition. It's almost like a business. So sometimes the junior lawyers, sometimes they might think, okay, we want to earn money, we want to overnight get vehicles, large houses, and when you are running at a speed, sometimes you lose your quality. So it's everywhere it's the same. All professions it's the same. So you can't stop that. Right? Any questions?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. Then we are talking about this special laws to recover debt. Section 4 of 1990, title Recovery of Loans by Banks, Special Provisions Act number 4 of 90. Purpose, an act to provide for the recovery of loans granted by banks for the economic development of Sri Lanka. So the expectation at that time to recover the loans for economic development. So if you are getting the loan recovery within 1 year, you can use that money once again for the economic development. Otherwise, what will happen? The money has gone for a 5 year. After 5 years, you are getting a reduced amount, which will not help for the economic development. And they wanted to have a more speedy method. Debt recovery special provision, then subsequently there were certain amendments to that. 2 of 1990 by Act number. So the amendment special provisions was introduced in 2 of 1990, and there were subsequently 4 of 1994. There were certain subsequent changes as well. The purpose to provide speedy procedure to recover of debt through courts. So this is a speedy method through courts. Our Parate auction is a speedy method without courts. In case of a property, you can go for auction. Board of directors can pass a resolution. You can go for an auction and sell the property. Practically selling these properties in the market is not possible. Today, the market prices have gone down, right? But recently I heard that expectation is where the market property prices might go up. So if you are planning to buy a land building, I think this is the right time. If you have excess money in your accounts, buy a land and keep it. Long run, it will help you to earn profit. Now, just imagine the dollar, how the way that the dollar is moving, right? The gold, if I'm not mistaken, in 1998, the gold sovereign was 3,000 rupees, right? Today, how much is a sovereign? More than 1 lakh, no? Right. So this is how the things are moving, and property seems to be a good investment, right? So why not try that as well? Procedure apply summary. So the this special provisions 2 of 1990, it's called the summary procedure. I will explain what is summary procedure. The facility must be granted on an instrument, written agreement. Instrument, check, promissory note, right? So you have to have an instrument for you to proceed with the summary procedure. If you don't have an agreement or an instrument, you're not in a position to continue under summary process. So banks, if you say financial institution, they have some kind of instrument. Now, when you go to a bank and if I'm going to ask over the counter, give me 100,000 loan without signing a document, they will not give. So you have to at least sign a small document, loan agreement, for you to get the facility. Then only they will give you the loan, right? So that clearly shows that banks can use this method. Amount should not less than 150,000. So if the amount is above 150, you can use this method. Following documents should be filed. Now here, earlier I told under money recovery action, it's a plaint. But under this method, it's a petition. So only the contents are the same. Only the word is different. But when you're filing a petition, you have to have an affidavit. Affidavit to the effect that some claimed is lawful due to the bank from the defender. The affidavit shall be made by the principal officer of the bank having personal knowledge of the facts of the cause of the action. So if I'm signing the affidavit, I must confirm I know personally this transaction, right? So all information which are there in the petition are correct is a confirmation from this affidavit. So you can see when you affidavit now, you all have seen obtaining affidavits by banks. So it's a declaration type of a thing confirming that this is right, this is in order. I confirm, I affirm the contents of this document are in order. So if you don't know, you can't give a confirmation, you can't give an affidavit. So that is why the requirements are very tough. Petition and affidavit, right? If you can't give the affidavit, then what normally do, Banks, they will go for a money recovery action because they don't know whether this instance is right. Sometimes you don't have the information. Right? So that's the very strong point. But I see we have to file a petition along with the affidavit. Now, in case of a money recovery, you just file the plate. No affidavit is required. You don't have to confirm what is there in the plate are right. You don't have to confirm the contents. You know personally the contents of this fact. Then the copy of decree Nyc, I will explain what is decree Nyc. Stamps for the decree Nyc and for the service of it. Loan agreement, statement account, and all other things. So all other connected documentation you have to file along with this petition, affidavit, copy of the decree Nyc, stamps for the decree Nyc, and for the service of it, and all other documentation. Any questions up to this point? No?
Sir, in case of affidavit, who signed usually? The lawyer of the bank? Or?
No. It's a senior of a banker. A principal officer of the bank having personal knowledge of the facts. So it can be your regional manager. Not the lawyer, not a lawyer. Lawyer will sign the petition, but the affidavit has to come from the business. So you all have different. The concern is, as I told you, this debt recovery provisions, most of the banks are not using because of their issues with regard to their documentation. If you are following this debt recovery provision, it has to be 100% perfect set of documents. If you have minor defects in your documents, your case will be thrown out. So since the banks don't want to take a risk, that is why they go for even a lengthy process of money recovery, not debt recovery provision. Okay. It's a bank officer. So you all have the nominated bank officers. Maybe that you all don't know because you all banks are not filing. Section 4, documents produced should be properly stamped, should not be suspicious, should be within prescription period. So if you miss any of these things, your case is thrown, where you can't maintain a case against that particular facility. Procedure, file a petition, affidavit, and all above documents. So you have to go to the district courts, file petition, affidavit, and all connected documents with the stamps, fees, everything, decree Nyc, to the courts. If all documents are perfect, right? If your documentations are not perfect, you can't go through this method. The decree Nyc will be served first instance. So the decree Nyc will be served by the courts first instance itself to the defendant. Serve the decree Nyc on the defendant with the petition, affidavit, and other documents. So earlier on the money recovery, summons were served. Here the decree Nyc will be served along with the plain petition and affidavits and those documents. Right. Defendant to seek leave from the court to show cause against the decree. Then defendant have to appear in front of the courts and get permission to enter into the case. Now under money recovery, it's a matter of just filing your answer. But here, once the decree Nyc is served, defendant have to appear, or his proxy will come and appear to say that we need to give permission to file our answer. So you can understand the difference, right? Earlier, it's a very casual process, but here with lot of rules for both parties. Leave to appear means the permission, and show cause against the decree Nyc by the defendant. So he has to get permission from the judge for him to come into the this framework and file his answer by paying into a court the sum mentioned in the decree Nyc or ordered by the court. So in the decree Nyc, normally you claim the maximum. You will say 500,000 plus 25,000 interest. So we will mention that amount in your decree Nyc for you defendant to come into the case. Either he will have to pay the full amount to the courts, not to me, not to the bank, deposit in the court the full amount, or amount that judge is going to mention. So just see if you follow this method, and if the judge agreed to get the full amount as a deposit to the courts, your matter is sorted. Now what happens in a money recovery process, you go for trial years and years and years, right? Finally you get the judgment in favor and nothing will happen. So the most important point for you to enter to the case, the defendant to enter into the case, he has to get permission, and at the same time he has to deposit an amount decided by the judge or which is there in the decree nisi. So normally you enter the full amount in the decree nisi. So in simple term, defendant can't enter into the case without depositing an amount. Depositing an amount means it's money for you. Upon the court being satisfied on the contents of the affidavit file, that they disclose the defense which prima facie sustainable framing and recording issues. So then the trial will go, but at the same time, when you come to this summary procedure trial, it will not drag, right? Within a short period, summary procedure trials will be dates. First day itself, they fix the dates, right? Within short period, because they want a speedy recovery. But money recovery, sometimes every 4 to 6 months. Even on the 4th month, sometimes you can go for a date. But debt recovery, no. Today we will discuss, we'll say, today we are going to take the trial at 4 o'clock. Today they are going to fix, tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Tomorrow, if we fail to finish it, following day 4 o'clock. Within continuous 3 days, they will finish the case, depending on the size of the case and depending on the court volume of the courts as well. Right? Where the defendant either fails to appear and show cause of having appeared, his application to show cause is refused, the court shall make decree nisi absolute. So decree nisi is served. When the decree nisi is served to the defendant, he has to come physically or through his proxy, requesting court to give permission to enter into the case. If the court is going to give the permission to enter into the case, he will have to pay a deposit, not to the bank, the courts. Once the deposit is done, only he can come out with his argument. Once the decree nisi is served, if the defendant is not coming, automatically decree nisi will become absolute. It's permanent. It's almost like the final decree. Decree absolute is not appealable. You can't take this decree nisi to a higher court and make it appeal, but may be set aside on the grounds that the defendant was prevented by reasons of accident or misfortune, nor that such decree nisi was not served to him. But if the defendant can prove that I was sick, I was not able to reach this decree nisi, in such an instance only this decree nisi will be kept to a side. If not, once the decree nisi absolute become converted into absolute, even you can't appeal at a higher court. So appealing is out. So you just see the privileges have for bankers. Unfortunately, bankers are not using these privileges because of the mistakes at the low level. At the point of acceptance of documents, there are a lot of mistake gaps. Because of that, banks can't go for this debt recovery provision. Any questions up to now?
Sir, in case of affidavit, that should be signed by the person who is appearing for the bank. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Giving evidence.
That's what the earlier question also, no? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
That means the documents are in order. All the documents are supposedly all the documents are imperfect. The
Yeah.
bank can decide go under this debt recovery process.
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes, definitely.
It's up to the bank. Bank will
Yes.
decide whether they are go for the debt recovery process or the other process.
Yes. It's a bank call. But if you have doubts, you will select the most safer method Money recovery, because money recovery, you can file any document, whether it's complete, incomplete, or that's finally, if you don't have documents also, you can go for money recovery. It's a matter, but you have to prove. Sometimes there is no proof that I have requested for a loan, right? If you can prove that you have credited my account 500,000, and if you can prove that I have taken money from this 500,000, that's more than enough. But you can't use this for debt recovery. If you are using it for debt recovery, my request has to be there. Your loan, opening my account mandate should be there, properly filled. My request for the loan should be there. Your process should be there. You have to prove that you have given me offer letter. I have accepted. Then you have obtained the loan agreements and rest of the document, perfect set of documents. Thereafter, you have granted. Thereafter, I have defaulted. Thereafter, you have sent me the letter of demand, and I have received that. Now I'm defaulting, and you can establish your case. So if you have only under money recovery, if you can prove that you credited, whether with my request or not, you have credited. If I have used that money, and at the point of default, you have sent the letter of demand with the postal article, and if you can confirm that this has been received by me, you don't have to have any other document, but you can file the action. So at that time, based on the evidence, if you can justify, though you don't have papers, documents, that I have taken the money, you will win the case. So it's a extreme 2 versions. But why we are going for this extreme 2 versions, we don't have a proper mechanism in the sector to have proper set of documents. Most of the bankers, they don't know, they don't use their common sense for lending, because they have targets given by the top to run. They take the battle without knowing the track. Sometimes they jump into another track and they fall. So this is not what we want, no? So you can see under, you go and check back to your organization and ask from your legal department. This was there in 1990, 2010, 2030, right? Almost, 20, yeah, almost 31 years. How many cases that you all have filed under this debt recovery? And you will get a clear idea how many you all have filed and why you are not filing these cases. Now, who is responsible? Not your legal team, it's the groundwork, the officers who are handling these files. Okay. So if you do your job at the ground level with proper mechanism, proper knowledge, all you can go for this debt recovery provision within a year. This whole, I will show you that within a year you can get the money back, right? Then definitely you will be able to reduce the number of cases what you have filed within a short period. Right? Just see the unfortunate, it's an unfortunate situation. We have the provision, other systems, other financial institutions, they don't have, only the banks have this right. But we are not using this. So it's due to a simple set of mistakes. If you have a proper checklist, right? According, in line with the checklist, if you can push it, all cases we can file under debt recovery. Right? I think the banks, they have to, once I suggested to the central bank also when I was the compliance officer, why don't you push this debt recovery? Because they're talking about recovery and PL, and they come out with a lot of reports to say that your NPL ratios are high, not bad, and you have not obtained this document and that document. Why can't they have a separate set of instructions for the banks to renew this debt recovery provision and push the banks for the debt recovery provision? I think it's really worth under current kind of a situation, no? I think, no, we should not start immediately, because all of us are suffering actually. The customers are suffering. If you're going to put a lot of pressure to the customers, sometimes they will have a lot of other personal issues as well. When you have a case dragging for 5 years, you have little time for breathing. If you go for a case within short time, within a year, they will not be able to breathe and they will not be able to do anything. So at least after this COVID, if you all can start this process, I think that is great. So when you are giving a facility, from the inception itself, you have to think if this customer is going to go default, we are going to file debt recovery. In line with that, you have to obtain documents. That's the whole idea, right?
So another
So,
question, a small one. The
yeah.
different bank, they are requesting different set of documents for granting a loan.
Which bank?
No, different banks
Mm-hmm.
asking different documents to granting a loan.
Okay.
So in that case, there is not any unique set of documents to provide to court under this debt recovery act. So if our bank, if we file a case under debt recovery act, court, whether the court accept the set of document issued by the norm, what are the documents that we have to collect from the particular bank is accepted by the courts.
Yeah. Okay. Now, any particular example that you have in your mind? Can you compare X bank is taking this document or you're taking this document, X bank is not taking this document, something to similar to that for me to explain it a
for
little
example,
bit.
For example, suppose for the housing loan purpose,
Okay.
Some banks, they are checking the title for 30 years, but some banks, they are checking the title for 15 years. So there is a discrepancy.
Okay. No, that
So
depends on.
in that case, court accepts whether this bank has correct or this bank has false. Court will decide, or the court accept the banking norm, the particular bank's norm will accepted by the courts.
Now, if you take your example, what you gave is not relevant for court at all. Whether the title is for 30 years, 20 years, or 15 years, it's not a problem for them. They will go through your mortgage bond and your loan agreement, your receipt, and other connected offer letter, whether these documents are not. That's it. Right? That's your own principle, whether you want a title for 20 years, 30 years, or 15 years, or 18 years. So court is not, they're not going to interfere with your own internal processes. Whatever the document, simply what you have to prove, I have requested a loan, you have accepted me as a customer, and you decided to give me a loan, and you have given me an offer letter. I have accepted the offer letter, and in line with the offer letter, I have given the security, whether the security documentation are perfect, and whether you have given me credited my account, and whether I have utilized that money. That's it. Right? Now, for an example, now your receipt is included in your loan agreement. We'll assume sometimes some banks, their receipt is almost a receipt and the standing order inbuilt in the loan agreement. So we'll say another bank, they have a separate standing order than receipt. So it's not a problem for the court. They will see whether you have taken the proper documents, what you're going to say is in line, and whether they have perfected document. That's it. But you have to fulfill, or you have to show that you have established a contract of acceptance consideration. Right? My request, your offer, I have accepted. You have given me the consideration. I have used that consideration. That's it. So the basic, if you can prove perfect documents while fulfilling the basic steps of a contract, your internal process is not relevant for the courts. Now, when you come to the law of banking, there are two things, law and practice. At the same time, okay, we'll assume that the court is going to ask, now this X bank is asking for 30 years, why you're asking for 20 years? You can easily say, look here, sir, our practice, in order to give, because in Sri Lankan context, we don't have clear title for 30 years. If we are going to look for 30 years title, sometimes we will not be able to consider any property, or majority of the properties we have to reject. As a practice from, we said 1990, we are checking the title only for 20 years. That's acceptable. So that is not a problem for the courts. Your own practice, as far as you can establish with reasonable grounds, court will accept. Because that's the law actually. Practice of banking have become law. Unfortunately, I don't know how many of you have done law. Right? Those days at the IBSL, we had this general principles of law at the intermediate level, and we had the practice of law. It's purely all the practices are there, right? And based on that, we learn a lot of practices. Unfortunately, today the bankers are not getting the preview for those information. Sometimes now it's compulsory, right? Sometimes students, they try to avoid this law, because when we go through the law papers, we can see different answers, right? Students, they don't know the basics. It's very pathetic. So make sure that you understand the law, because law is your basic, whatever the job you are doing in the bank. If you go to another bank or any financial institution or any job, the knowledge what you gain from banking are the basics. All this basic contractual agency, sale of goods, recovery, security, all are very important for your life. So understand, at least read a note and understand. If you have not done law and the practice of banking, those are very important topics. So that's the basic. Law today is a basic for any program. Accountancy basic law. Marketing basic law. HR basic law. Economic basic law. So you get this law as a basic qualification. Then based on that, you try to develop. So it's not a problem. Whether you have your own process, own set of documents, it's not a problem for the courts. They are not talking about a unique process, because if, as far as you can justify, this is our organization practice, it was there for so many years, no problem. Now, normally, sometimes the courts, they will ask for information more than 6 years. Checks, post the past checks. And so if you, when you inform, the banker's practice is where we keep the documents only for 6 years. That's it. They're not worried. They accept it. They understand, how can you keep for so many years? Right? You can't keep it. But if you realize, okay, there's a court case or something, you can't destroy those. So it depends on how you handle it now, because of you can scan it and you can put it into a folder. So you have a lot of options today. Rather than throwing it, you can archive it and keep it. It will help you to keep records more than 6 years. This 6 years rule was introduced long time back. Today, even for 10-15 years, you can keep records. Okay, any questions?
So in case of that recovery, if court decide that the documents are not perfect, they will not take up the that they will not proceed with that.
No, you can't. You should not take a risk. That's what I told you. If the documents are not perfect, you will not be able to continue. So you have to ensure that if there's any objections from the other party for incomplete documents, you are losing everything. If you go to money recovery, at least you can drag the case for and go push the customer for a settlement. But if your documentation not perfect, that's the end of your story.
So
That is
if
why the bankers don't want to take the risk. Yes.
So if those are not perfect, if they reject, can we go for money recovery then?
No. Only one case against one default, right? You can't go for once again. You can't go back to money recovery.
If they reject, we can't go for
No,
again.
no, no, no. That's it. That's it. That is why the banks are not taking a risk. Money recovery, you can somehow push it and you can justify, and at the point of justifying your arguments, you can establish your point. But when you come to debt recovery, there is no option. That's it. Your options are gone unless you withdraw subject to, if the court permit, you can withdraw your case subject to filing once again in a money recovery provision. So that has to happen in initial stage, not until the decree serves and where the other party objects and they highlight that there are certain weaknesses. So it's the discretion of the judge. Judges are very strict on that aspect because they know you have to have perfect set of documents. If you don't have the perfect set of documents, we should not give you the privilege. Now you have 50% set of documents and you're getting enjoying the privilege. So very clearly the rule says you have to have perfect set of documents, and the affidavit should confirm that these are in order. So normally I have seen in certain instances bankers, they create documents, right? Sorry to say that they don't give proper account balances. Account balance is the position statement. They mix interest and capital together and show total outstanding. So you can't do that kind of things when you go for debt recovery. It has to be very clean set of documents. Right? Any other questions?
Sir, small mistakes, even for a small alteration
No,
or something
no,
like
no,
that,
no, no, no. You are not
even for
supposed
that they
to.
reject.
It's a technical thing. As I told you, it depends on the judge, I would say. But normally banks are not ready to take even a small mistake. Maybe a genuine type of a mistake is acceptable, but you are changing the interest rate from 12% to 16%, not acceptable. But 16 to 12% acceptable because you are charging a reduced amount. Earlier you have type 16, now you are going to say it's 12%. So then you can say, okay, that this is what has happened, or what type that you have included in the offer letter 12%, but loan agreement you have indicated as 16, right? So you're claiming 12%. Judge will see, okay, this is something comfortable for the customer, no problem, fine, you go ahead with. But if the other way, if you have signed only 12% in the agreement, and if your offer letter 12%, agreement 16%, and if you are claiming 12%, that will say, look here, you have discrepancy, almost there's a huge discrepancy, and you are claiming the higher one. If you claim the low one, no problem. If you are claiming the higher figure, that's out. So even a small mistake, you should not. Now, why are we having mistakes? Now, if you take a loan agreement, how many places that you have to type? The biggest issue, once after you grant the facility, only the documents are typed. Because the bankers, they take blank signatures on blank documents. Sometimes the letterhead, if you take the offer letter, we'll say the letterhead, if the full page, sometimes the offer letter contents will concluded here, so customer has signed here. So why this gap? If you have signed, if you have typed everything and the customer can sign here, but the customer can't sign here, you get the signature at the bottom, you type somewhere here and finish it. Or sometimes your typing has gone up to here, the customer has signed here. So who is responsible? Those are common mistakes, common sense mistakes by the bankers. So how can a judge agree for that? Right? Okay. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. Where the defendant either fails to appear. Okay, right, I did that slide. Execution of the decree absolute. Where the decree Nyc is made absolute, it shall be deemed to be a writ of execution duly issued by the fiscal. So then automatically you don't have to wait for judgment, straight away decree Nyc. It's once it becomes decriminalized as absolute, it's a fiscal order. The writ of execution shall valid for a period of 3 years from the date of which the decriminalized was made absolute. So then you have the decree NIC absolute for you to claim for 3 years. So the point is where at the beginning itself you get a fee and you straight away you can execute and recover the outstanding. Restriction of alienation of property. This is also very important. After the service of decriminalized, the defendant or his representative in interest shall not alienate any movable or immovable property. So once the decriminalized is served, the defendant can't transfer his property, sell his property. All such transaction, if you can prove that he has done, all get cancelled. So what more we can expect from the law, right? The points what I have here highlighted are common risk type of platform should come. But when you come to recovery, I think this is the best set of rules given for the banks. Unfortunately, bankers are not following it. What is Parat execution? Any questions? This is the up to this point is the debt recovery provision. Is it clear what is debt recovery? The difference between money recovery and debt recovery? Is it clear? Hope the provisions are clear. I explained in detail. I don't see any gaps. I have not explained anything. I have clearly gave you all the points required for you to understand. Is it clear? I assume that it's clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is Parat execution? Parat execution is a procedure specially available for banks, which allows to resale of property mortgage of the bank without referring to the courts. So here you can sell the property without referring to the courts. Banks itself is given the power to hold an auction for the sale of the property by appointed auctioneer and recover the outstanding. So I have obtained a property mortgage. I'm defaulting. You can inform me by a letter of demand. And if I'm not paying, your board of directors can take a call and fix the auction and resell it. The procedure is relatively quick, and it also gives the customer an opportunity to come before the bank during the interim period and settle the amounts due. Therefore, the procedure is beneficial for bank as well as the customer, as it removes the hassle of going through the court procedure for bank and gives a customer an opportunity to save his property. So there can be a lot of negotiations between the customer and the bank. It gives a lot of opportunity for the customer to settle. If he can't settle, he can bring a buyer, right? And also when you are fixing, it's there. I will explain that in the next slide. He has the opportunity to come to a conclusion before you go for the auction. He can bring some money and deposit and rework and reschedule the facility. Steps: send the letter of demand, right? Resolution to be adopted by the directors, board of the bank, appointing an auctioneer, appointing the manager. So the board of directors will pass a resolution appointing an auctioneer and the appointing manager. Notice of resolution shall be published in the Gazette in at least 3 daily newspapers in Sinhala, Tamil and English languages. So you have to publish a Gazette notice plus newspapers with regard to the auction. Copies of such notices shall be dispatched to the borrower, other persons. Now we have to inform the party, look here, we are going for auction. Notice of sale, notice of the date, time and the place of the sale, 14 days before the date fixed for the sale, be published in the Gazette, and the copies of such notices shall be dispatched to the borrower and posted on the near property of the sold. So if you have seen banners on the top of, in front of the property to say, the bank is going for auction on such and such a day at this time, and posted on the near property of the sold, indicating 14 days before the auction, the date, time, and the place. So it will give an opportunity for the interested parties to come for the auction and bid. So hardly people come and bid at this particular place. Most of the time, the auctioneer will be there. They will put the hammer thrice, and then the property will be taken in the name of the bank. But you don't get the absolute ownership for that, right? And it's a temporary certificate of sale will be issued in the bank's name. And thereafter, you have to once again find a person to sell the property. Then what happens? Payment before sale, auction has to be cancelled. So before the auction, if the customer pay everything, you have to cancel the auction. Upset price, the board has to fix the upset price below which the property shall not be sold to any person other than the bank. Right? So upset price is the actual price of the property. Now, for an example, if the market, it goes with the market price, right? Market price is 10 million. You gave a loan of 8 million. Today, the outstanding is 4 million. Today, the property price is 15 million. So market price 15 million, your outstanding 4 million. You can't sell it at 5 million and settle your outstanding and give 1 million to that poor person. If the market price is 18 million, at least you have to fix the upset price around 18 to 17. That's acceptable. And you have to push the property at that price. We'll say you sold it at 17, you recover your 4 million, and the balance 13 million you have to give back to the customer. So sometimes those days, I can remember certain banks, they acquire bank customers' property at a low rate. It's not fair. It's not right. If our outstanding is 4 million, if the property value is 15 million, 18 million, how can you purchase at 4 million? It's not right, no? Okay, the bank can purchase the property if the bank is going to buy at 17 million. No problem. Customer is getting, whether the bank is going to buy or whether the third party is going to buy for 17 million is not a problem. Whereas the market price is 18, okay, you fix the price at a reasonable price. To say, normally when you accelerate to market price, no. If you want to sell your vehicle, you will say, okay, 10 million, right? But when the buyers come, they will say you give it at 8 million, 7 million, 6 million, 9 million, then you gradually you reduce it and you settle at 7 million and you sell it. So you can say the market price. Now today what has happened, the vehicle prices are like, I saw recently, Benz car is 18 million and this other vehicle, Toyota, what is the Toyota vehicle that you see? Premio is 19 million, not 20.
Toyota Premio.
Yeah, Toyota Premio is 20 million and the Benz car is 18 million. I don't know what type of market is this. It's a little bit funny. Will a person purchase a Toyota premium car for 20 million today? I don't know. I'm not sure. Can you sell your Toyota premium car for 20 million today? I'm not sure. Because simply you can't. Before this restriction, it was running around 10 million used one. So how can 100% jump? So this is the local market, which is a little bit funny. Who is going? Will you purchase a Toyota premium car today for 20 million? Even for 15 million, I don't think. So I can say, okay, this is my price. Who is going to buy at that price? Right? So it has to be the correct price. Upset price is, it should be the correct price, not a price favorable for the bank or not a price that bank can recover the outstanding. Then the auction, condition for sale, auctioneer, certificate of sale, board of directors. These are the other documents. Amendments, number 1 of 2011, no action shall be initiated to recover of any loan in respect of which default is made where capital amount of such loan is less than rupees 5 million. So in case now there was an amendment in 1 of 2011, what it says is if the capital amount is less than 5 million, you can go for this parate action, right? So sometimes the customer will take 6 million, gradually he will reduce to 4.5 million. You can go for parate. You will have to go for mortgage bond action. It will drag for 10 years. And subsequently it came, there is, if third party, you can't go for action. It has to be on your own name, or if you are a directors of a company, you have to hold more than 50%. So there were certain court cases came into action to put restrictions over this particular free movement of this parate auction. Okay, that's all about parate auction. Any questions?
Sir, in case of parate action, do we have to revalue the
Yes, at the
property?
time of resale auction, you have to revalue it. Otherwise, it's not fair from the customer, no? You have done a valuation 10 years back where the property value is 10 million. Now, unless you value today, definitely it would have gone more than double. So you have to do a fresh valuation and decide upset price. You have to have a very transparent process for that, right? And also, if I'm not mistaken, if you're taking a customer's property, I think you have to get the central bank approval as well. Okay.
Sir, what is the second amendment you said?
In case of a
Amendment,
third, I think I can't remember whether the second one came prior to this 2011. In case of a third party property, now for an example, I have taken a facility against your property. I have defaulted. The bank can't go parate auction on your property because you have not got any benefit out of that. You're outside. I'm an individual. A facility is given to my name. You have signed as a mortgage because your property is coming. So then the court said no in case of a third. So it's a third party property. In case of third party mortgages, the banks can't go parate auction. So what we can do is you have to go, a bank have to go under mortgage bond action only.
So what is the other amendment, sir? You mentioned?
That is the amendment. I can't exactly remember the other amendment.
Only that one, huh?
Yeah, only this one. If I'm not amendment, there's no amendments. It's one of 2011. All other subsequent changes are through court cases.
Oh.
Okay. Right. Then the final 2 slides is on creditors winding up. Strictly speaking, winding up is not or should not be used as a means of debt recovery as it is insolvency procedure. So it's not as I told you, it's not a fair way of recovering your outstanding. Its objective is to ensure pari passu treatment of all unsecured creditors. So you can file, but all the creditors' liabilities should be taken equal, and pari passu means equally. You have to consider the all rights of all creditors. The inability to pay debt is a ground of petitioning for a company to be wound up. So if you can't pay, I can take you as a creditor to the courts. So banks as creditors, if you're not going to pay, I can take you to courts. Thus, a lending bank has a statutory right to present a winding up petition to court if it is indebtedness has fallen due and not being repaid the debtor company. So if I can prove that you have indebtedness means you are not in a position to pay your liabilities from your income. In such an instance, I can go to courts and file an action against your company. The court must be satisfied that if the debt is currently due for payment, but this debt has to be currently due for payment. If it is not due, I can't make a claim. It's due, I have claimed, and now you're not paying. In such an instance, only I can go to courts and claim for the payment. Circumstances in which company is deemed unable to pay its debts are if it is not complied with the statutory demand, if your company is not paying the statutory demand, EPF, ETF, taxes, salaries, then I have a right. If execution of judgment of other process issued against the company is returned unsatisfied, there were certain judgments against the company, they were not satisfactorily fulfilling those requirements. It is proved to the satisfaction of the court that the company is unable to pay its debts as they fall due, and in determining whether company is unable to pay its debts, the court shall take into account the company's contingent and prospective liabilities. So if I can prove that the company is not in a position to pay its debts when it comes to for them to pay, that's more than enough. In such an instance, court will request the other creditors to file their claims, and they will go for a winding up. So it's not a method, suitable method, but it's an option available under the Companies Act. So the last option is available under the Companies Act. Debt recovery provisions are there from the debt recovery provision. Money recovery provisions are there from the civil court, civil procedure. Settlement is also an informal method. Mediation provisions come from mediation board. Parate auction comes from the debt recovery. So I think as bankers, we have a lot of options. Unfortunately, we are still stuck with high NPLs. Simple reason, inaccurate secret documentation. Okay, any questions? So next week I will explain about the types of securities available, and most probably I will be able to finish that part as well. And after that, most probably I will see whether there are 2 more lessons. Next week I can finish my securities, and the final session is on money laundering and regulatory compliance side. Most probably I'll be taking it up on a later date. Next week I'll be coming. So if you have any concerns with regard to your assignment, you can ask next week and clear everything, and let me know if you have any questions. Any questions, final questions for the day?
Sir, mortgage recovery is the same as the money recovery? The same?
It's a separate process. Mortgage bond action is a separate process. Almost like money recovery, the same set of processes there, but it's a lengthy process. Well, lengthy in the sense it takes time. The shorter version is the parate auction. So normal loans, instead of going for money recovery, you can go for debt recovery. Properties, instead of going for mortgage bond action, you can go for parate. So movables, immovables, we have option, that is parate auction and debt recovery. We are using debt recovery, we are using parate, but we are not using debt recovery. Instead of that, we are going for money recovery. In certain instances, if you can't go for parate, especially if the capital amount is less than 4.5, in case of a third party property, then you have to go for mortgage bond action. Yes, any questions? Only Sampath is talking, others, they don't have questions. Okay, then make sure that there's another week quarantine, a lockdown. So hope all of you all are safe. I know that you all have to do your job, but at the same time, follow all the steps that you all have to follow. Any step that you feel this is a control, you have to do it. Don't wait till the government is giving you directions or the health authority is giving instructions. Everything, you have your own process. After taking all the controls, and if you are getting positive, it's a totally different thing. But without having the proper controls and getting, it's not worth. It's normally once you get we don't know what are the complications, but if you have taken the vaccination and if you follow the proper steps, I think there's nothing to worry. But there were two of our individual department people got affected. Nothing happened, luckily. But they are not fit, I would say. They're young boys, but they say that they have small complaints. So it's how it goes. Put all your controls. Don't go out. Even don't visit your neighbor. Don't allow your relations to come, even for just 5 minutes. And make sure that when your deliveries come, throw all the shopping bags out. Recently, as I told you, I heard there were spread of this virus through shopping bags and the materials that come from out. So destroy everything. Don't even keep it for your collect your garbage. Straight away it's garbage. And wash as much as possible whatever you get and keep it in a separate place, and after time try to use it. So everything is stuck what to do. This is life. But at the same time, life should move also. So take care and be safe, and hope everything will change in a short period. So as bankers, we know the gravity of this. Okay then. Thank you.